We all need to be cognizant of time. So to begin with our emergency evacuation procedure, should an emergency occur, you can exit the building through the lobby, either to the east or west. If for some reason those exits are not available, you can exit behind the horseshoe here into the council lounge and out the back door with council. The muster point is located at the gazebo. If we're evacuated for any reason, we will not enter the building until we're given the all clear by staff. So, adoption of the agenda. Is there anything, Ms. Phillips, that you want to add to this?
Good afternoon, Council. There are no additions. Excellent.
So, adoption of the agenda. It's all not jump all at once. Okay, Councillor Bilito. Okay, it's going to be a long evening. Okay, moved by Councillor Bilito. All in favor? Excellent. Just a comment on these discussion items. A couple of these discussion items have the potential to be very, very long. So in the interest of time, let's just be cognizant that if any of these items need to be brought back to another conversation at another time, I'd like to not be here today until 10 o'clock tonight. So we're just going to be aware as we go. We're going to start with the discussion items. Of course, we have the wonderful Mr. Watson with us today. The Municipal Solid Waste Master Plan.
Thank you, Council. And I guess while we're waiting for our PowerPoint to load, this is, for those who don't know, this is my colleague, Mr. Darren Smiller. He is a solid waste supervisor with the Public Works Department. Full screen. He's a pretty average IT guy. He's a good Public Works guy, but he's pretty average IT. Minimize that.
Yeah, we got a bunch of average IT people around the horseshoe too, so we're doing all right. Good company.
There. Why'd you point at me?
No, it was you. I was pointing directly at you.
Good to go, Mr. Chairman? Okay, thanks. Good evening. We're here to present Council with the draft Municipal Solid Waste Master Plan and to seek feedback from Council so that we may finalize the plan and present it back to Council in the next few weeks. And why we are here, in the box on the screen, you'll see we're looking for the answers to those questions from Council. If there's comments, feedback, is there anything missing? We would take your comments and incorporate those in the final version of the plan, and like I say, to present back to you here in a couple of weeks. And we are aware of the length of this and the time, and I'm gonna go fairly quick, and please, you know, if you need me to slow down or provide information, I'll gladly do that. The master plan is a strategic planning document used to provide direction for the short, the medium, and the long-term management of solid waste services. This is an update from the plan from 2002, and it's created by GHD Canada, which is a global environmental consultant. The plan addresses all aspects of municipal solid waste services and delivery, and includes waste audits, public consultations, and considers the implications of the new extended producer responsibility program. The box at the bottom of that slide, after receiving this report tonight and eventually the final version of it, Council is not bound or committed to any of the recommendations we're going to talk about tonight. Each and every one of those will be vetted individually by Council through either the budget process or through a bylaw amendment. So receiving the plan does not necessarily begin the implementation of the recommendations inside the plan. During the development of the plan, the project team reviewed several supporting documents, including all those on your screen. And you notice that the very last one on the bottom far right is the old council strategic plan. And this council, as you know, is in the process of developing their strategic master plan for this term. The future implementation of any of the recommendations in the master plan will certainly consider whatever document council produces pertaining to solid waste. And here's a quick look at the background. I won't go through any of this, of the 2002 Waste Management Plan. Why update? Well, first of all, it's quite outdated. There's been policy changes, both federally and provincially, including the new Extended Producer Responsibility Program. The town has added new services since then, including curbside organic collection and curbside recycle collection. Of course, there's been population growth since 2002, and the expectations have changed, both politically and the public, pertaining to environmental stewardship. The master plan was developed in 3 stages. You can see on this slide where we've been, and we're going to talk briefly about some of those steps, where we are, and where we're going. Moving to the current waste system assessment, there are 3 core curbside services that we provide. Weekly black cart collection, bi-weekly blue cart collection, both performed by the town using both 240 and 360 liter carts, and annual organic waste program collected by a contractor using resident provide containers weekly for 24 weeks per year. This slide is a comparison of the 2003-2004 numbers, and the next slide will explain why these are important. You can see that although the town grew, garbage did not, which is encouraging. Recycling increased by 15% over the 2003 numbers, or 23, pardon me, and organic waste collection increased by 14%. Very encouraging numbers. And these numbers are important because they're used to calculate the curbside waste diversion rate. The diversion rate is a key metric that is used to determine the health and success of the curbside recycling and organic waste collection programs. It's simply a percentage of the waste collected at the curb that is diverted away from a landfill. The national average for curbside waste diversion is 32%, and you can see ours is just under 23%. So there's certainly room for improvements here, and we'll be focusing on this number for the next several years and bringing that up to an acceptable level. In fact, with a strong public education program and other initiatives, waste diversion rate of 35% by 2031 is both reasonable and achievable. In order to improve the waste diversion rate, we need to know what's in the garbage. This information will help us make better waste management decisions and will result in an increased diversion rate ultimately. We do this by conducting a waste characterization study. So what we did, we collected 100 random houses in July, and in November collected the same 100 houses. We dumped the contents of the black carts on the ground, we sorted by waste stream, and weighed it. The results were interesting and I think fairly surprising. First, there was a strong black cart set-out rate of at least 85% in both surveys. Organic waste made up 43% of the garbage volume in July during the organic waste collection program and dropped to 33% in November after the organic waste collection program had ended. Only 37 to 43% of the contents of the black cart was actually landfillable material, meaning that at least 57% of the material in the black carts were divertible products. Of the organic waste in the garbage, the majority was not yard waste. In fact, it was only 7% in July, but rather food waste made up 28 to 29% of the garbage volume in both studies. Furthermore, the container set-out rate was only 20% in July, which is showing a very weak participation in the program. And this is clearly an area targeted for improvement. Other divertible products in the garbage included recyclables, which made up 14 to 15% of the garbage, but there was a strong set-out rate of at least 75 to 79%. Organics and recycling combined made up at least 48% of the volume of garbage in the black cart. Diverting these products, or even some of this volume, would significantly improve our diversion rate. The next step in the development of the master plan was to engage the public. We needed to hear their perspective on the needs, the priorities, and the values relating to solid waste services. There's 2 opportunities for the public to engage. The first was an open house held at the NextSource Center in July, and the second was an online survey. We engaged with 249 residents. Generally, residents support waste diversion, want convenient and affordable services, recognize the importance of education and communication, show measured support for new initiatives, and want a balanced approach between cost and the benefit to the environment. The next 2 slides are captured from the actual public survey, and we asked which programs or services they used, and the top 2 were Drop and Swap and our website. And you look further down the list, you can see a strong participation in other waste initiatives. Very encouraging information. We asked the importance of key aspects of waste programs, and they answered simplicity and access to information. Next, we answered what's important for you, for Imagine Waste, and we heard simplicity again and affordability. We asked what should the town's focus be for the next few years, and we heard year-round organic collection, and tied with that is the diversion of recyclables and organics. Changes to the frequency of curbside collection, including weekly recycling and bi-weekly garbage collection. And looking down the list, you can see strong support for the town to provide a green card program and receive more products at the waste transfer site. And speaking of the waste transfer site, we asked if they use that, and a strong 87% of the respondents said they do. And among the comments about the waste transfer site is expand the materials accepted, such as tree branches and hazardous materials, expand the hours to provide more convenient access to the facility. And they noted congestion, the lack of parking, the need for improved signage, and a desire for a larger drop and swap area. And lastly, we asked for general comments regarding waste services, and we heard that programs are easy to use and convenient, that they are expensive, that there's a desire for weekly recycling, bi-weekly garbage, and year-round organics, that other products such as glass are collected at the curb. And as we know from the EPR program and discussions, glass, aerosol, and styrofoam products are being accepted on October 1st, 2026. Additional opportunities to dispose hazardous household products by adding a second annual toxic waste roundup. So now that we have detailed current system analysis, a waste characterization study, and comments from the public, we can now look at the recommendations in the plan that will improve waste diversion, create efficiencies, and set a path forward for the town. The first recommendation is to increase blue cart capacity rather than change collection frequency. Weekly recycling collection can be considered after the initiatives recommended in the plan are unsuccessful, but that would require, of course, negotiation with the Extended Producer Responsibility Program administrator, because they are responsible for service levels and not the town. So to increase capacity, the plan proposes promoting the use of 360-liter carts at no additional charge to those that need them. We could also allow multiple carts per address if necessary. The no charge part is to encourage diversion and use. The demand for 360-liter carts from the public would be an indication to us of the requirement for increased capacity. For example, if we said, whoever needs a 360-liter cart, just call us and we'll bring you one, and we get thousands of phone calls, there's obviously capacity issues with the system. But if we get a couple dozen, then we're probably managing the capacity the right way, instead of making the extreme step and the hard to reverse step of going to weekly collection when it may not have been necessary. And that's kind of the way the plan is. Try this first, then escalate to this. To maintain financial control, we would limit the amount of 360-liter carts available per year to about 250. These changes ensure that the residents who do not require additional capacity are not financially penalized. Excuse me just a second. Going too fast, sorry.
If anyone has questions for Mr. Watson as we're going along, or anything you want to clarify, please by all means jump in. Yeah.
Just with respect to the diversion rate, you said that it's 22 and change percent. Is it considered in that the organics pickup is only for a portion of the year? Like, what I'm saying is that accounted for, because you can't really divert the organics in December, as an example?
Yeah, good point. It's not. It is the total volume for the year, and although the program only runs for 26 weeks, then yeah, it assumes the full year, so it's not a true calculation. But you can hear by 33 to 43% of organics in the garbage, it's a higher rate. In the summer, during the program, it was 43%. So, you know, that's a good point. And thank you. That was through the chair, of course. Yeah, thank you. Carry on, Mr. Chair. The next recommendation pertains to organic waste. Since we now know that the organic waste collection program has a low participation rate with a 20% set-out rate, and 33 to 43% of the contents are organic waste, we can see significant improvements by supplying green carts, in-house kitchen containers, and providing the service year-round. And what that might look like is the program would run about 26, it would mirror Red Deer's, if you're familiar with that, run about 26 to 30 weeks through the summery months with weekly collection and about every second week for the balance of the year. And I see Innisfail just last week have a similar program, but they went to monthly through the winter, so we'd have to evaluate the reason behind that. But anyway, that's roughly what it might look like to go to a year-round. And the green cards would simplify the program, increase the convenience for residents, therefore increase participation and increase that diversion rate. Once year-round organics is implemented and knowing at least 33% of the contents of a black card is organic waste, then we can transition to bi-weekly garbage collection. Further diversion of other products into black cart can create at least 57% more capacity, meaning that weekly collection of garbage would be inefficient and unnecessary. During implementation, we would promote the use of 360-liter carts for a fee to maintain a user pay system and promote diversion. And the side note, bi-weekly garbage collection would create an incredible efficiency for public works. The way it is right now is 1 week when we collect garbage, we send out 2 trucks and 2 staff and we collect garbage. The next week when we do garbage and recycling, we send out 4 trucks and 4 staff. By alternating garbage collection and recycle collection, we would just need 2 staff every week and 2 trucks. We could reduce the number of staff hours committed to waste collection and reduce the amount of fleet vehicles that we need to perform the service. The next recommendation involves the West End Recycling Facility, or WRF. Currently, as you know, both recycling depots are funded by the EPR program. And on October 1st, 2026, all residential properties in Sylvan Lake, including large multifamily dwellings who currently do not receive recycle service, will receive recycling services through the EPR program, making the WRF redundant. Therefore, the recommendation is close the WRF if the funding for the EPR program ends. Keep it open if they continue funding it, close it if the funding ends. Institutional, commercial, or industrial properties, or those residents who occasionally exceed the capacity of their blue card, may continue to use the East End Recycling Facility for disposing their recyclable products. Next recommendation pertains to the waste transfer site, which was constructed in 1985 after the closing of the town's landfill on a small footprint that has not been enlarged since. It's become cluttered and congested for anybody who's been there and is recommended for expansion. Expansion would allow the facility to receive additional products while reducing congestion. The expansion can be coordinated with the lagoon reclamation project that is currently underway. And there's a really small map on there. It gives you an indication of where that facility would grow to, and that is town-owned lands. Land acquisition would not be required for the expansion of the waste transfer site. And there's a few other highlights, just picking out a few. As mentioned earlier, a second toxic roundup event until a permanent location is established at the expanded waste transfer site, and conduct another waste audit in 5 years. And the very first thing we'll be looking at is that diversion rate and comparing it to the benchmark diversion rate that this master plan has. Investigate the value of joining a waste commission. Improve public education and promote diversion. As you know, that program is almost free with great rewards. And revise the waste bylaw to require mandatory diversion like many municipalities around us have. So we roll out the green cart, we have blue cart, we do periodic inspections, we warn people that aren't separating their waste, and we try and get compliance that way. Residents separating their waste is the most inexpensive, meaningful thing that they can do to improve the efficiency and the cost of the solid waste system. Next steps, as mentioned, we'd like to finalize the master plan with council's comments tonight and questions and whatever else they may have to offer. We'll be back in a couple of weeks or a month or two, present the finalized master plan to council for adoption. We'll develop for council and present an implementation plan based on the recommendations in the master plan, including detailed financial analysis and other implications of making changes. And we'll update the master plan as recommended so that we can benchmark our successes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. That was unbelievably informative. There's a few things in there I'd like to see again. I think you hit the points as you went. There's a lot of information to absorb. Questions for John at this point? Comments are good too. Yeah? Mayor?
I've got a whole list. Would you like them all at once, or would you like them one by one?
Mr. Watson, how would you like
I
it?
would love them one by one, for sure. Thank you.
Great. My first one is just a feedback point around our current organics program. I'll note that everywhere, the only thing we call it is the yard waste program. And that certainly, to me, optics-wise, factors into what you would use it for, because we don't advertise it anywhere, including the app, the web page, anywhere else, as anything other than yard waste collection. So just hoping we can consider a shift in language that costs us nothing. A request around the same topic, but I was chatting to the Mayor Blackfalds recently, and she talked about how their council is scheduled for a waste tour coming up, and I thought, tell me more. And they're actually seeing kind of the life cycle and where it ends up going, and they're connecting with Red Deer, and I don't know that we've ever done that sort of a tour. I did do once a recycling tour in the city of Calgary through FCM. It was really interesting, but wonder if there ever might be a cause to do something a bit more local for council. They're not really questions, so maybe I will just my other thing that wasn't really captured that I saw in the report was just the use of the app. We already have this great app that pushes things out, but I find we don't use it for anything else. Snow clearing was one example I had in mind, that we're already designated by date, and snow clearing tends to follow that. And I guess I wonder, is the app doing what it should be doing? Or is it a greater communications app that we need, or can we use it for other things other than just the reminder? I did appreciate this year that the extra recycle pickup after the holidays was included, but we don't seem to use it for anything else. And I think if we had enough buy-in, and I actually haven't seen it advertised in any way for quite some time, but if we already have it, and I assume we pay for it, just wonder if that's something else we could incorporate in. I really like that we're talking about the bins for year-round or for extended organics. I think that's really important. It is hard when you're trying to cram your organics into a yard bag from Canadian Tire, and it limits what you would put in there. So I think that would really increase the usage, along with a bunch of resident education over what could go in there. I like that it was addressed around the waste transfer site hours. And my question before I got to the point where it addressed it was, I don't think our current hours are sufficient. And I wonder how they've proposed some new hours, how they got to those proposals. So maybe that's actually a question that could be answered.
Yeah.
What was the methodology used there?
Thanks for the comments and the questions. And the waste transfer site hours, and through the chair, of course, the waste transfer site hours came up to relieve congestion. You know, the theory is by more hours, there'll be less people there at any given time. And that's what, and then the report suggested Sundays. And, you know, Sundays would be a challenge for us. It's not a staffing issue. It's Red Deer's landfill is closed on Sundays, so we wouldn't be able to service the facility. But the point is, consider expanding the hours, and if we had more hours, we'd have less people there at any given time, and therefore reduce the congestion. As far as the Go Green app, and those are good comments. When we initially went with Go Green, and we named it Go Green, it was very environmentally focused, and we thought, well, geez, we're not utilizing it for snow removal and other things like the city of Red Deer and the city of Edmonton do, and Edmonton does, and we have limitations, and Jared might jump in with a comment, but there's limitations to that app, and we've talked about utilizing. We believe that we're utilizing it to its full capacity. Now, as far as downloads, it's probably not advertised as good as it should, but we see a regular increase in users. Every year there's a jump, and there's a council report that you see that Kim presented, I think at the end of the last council term, that showed a really significant increase. I don't even want to guess at the number, I can't remember, but it was every quarter you see an increase in the amount of users. So it is reaching people, and we probably could do a better job of communicating that and a whole bunch of other things in this plan, because like I said in the presentation, you know, it's almost free. Education is almost free with great rewards. And, you know, educate people on the Go Green app, and it's got a great reward, and educate people on diversion and the cost of the programs with great rewards. So we probably could do better with the Go Green app for sure. Good comments. Thank you.
Councillor Cindy,
Can I finish my list?
you had a lot of time. I'll come back to you.
You didn't tell me to prioritize the items.
Councillor Cindy.
We'll bounce back and forth then around the table. One specific question first. In the master plan draft, it refers to the previous master plan, talking about buying a front load truck to start collecting commercial waste as a revenue generator for our town. Is that still a realistic program to jump into? And is there hesitation to that? What was the thinking?
Well, that wasn't discussed. That's obviously captured from the 2002 plan.
Yeah.
And back in the day, just like this plan, the council of the day analyzed, yeah, let's do this, but let's not do that. And that must have made the do not do list, but that never came up during this. We'd have to do some type of business case to determine that. It would take specialized equipment, specialized staff, and be a big capital expense to get into. We would own the bins, we would own the trucks, we would need the staff. But to answer your question, no, that wasn't considered in this plan, or in the last 10 or 20 years that I can recall. We haven't gone down that road.
Okay. Some of my thoughts too around the current plan, not as much question, but more thoughts. Overall, I like the direction of the master plan. And when I think about, you know, how to implement, I think education is a really big one, and that's been touched on. You know, about everything from like the 360 bins. One of the big ones for helping people change is they have to know the why. For instance, why would I divert organics from my garbage bin? I might do it, and personally I do it. It has nothing to do with the money. It's about that's the right thing to do and make good soil rather than just filling up landfills. You know, I think about that. But for many people, it's the finances. Like, what money would we save? So I think that messaging has to be really strong to help people change their behavior. So why reduce organics? Why divert? Like, really, what's the point? You know, just truck it to Red Deer or truck the organics somewhere else. We're still trucking. Do we really save anything? So I think that message is really strong needs to be very strong. Another one that didn't come up so strongly in the master plan, maybe I just missed it myself, but the idea of not just educating the public, but businesses, so that we collectively as businesses change our behaviors, so restaurants can divert as well, or is it just a pain in the butt? You know, I even think about the senior center. You know, when we use a plastic cup, just about everybody throws it in the garbage. Practically nobody takes that plastic cup and throws it in the green bin right beside it. And so we've got tons of education to do to divert. The service levels side of things, one of them is the wharf. You know, personally, the West End recycling facility, I personally would love to see it stay, but if it becomes such a strong cost item, you know, think otherwise. But I think that's something to fight for in terms of, especially here we are trying to do the right thing environmentally, and now I'm going to drive all the way across town to, you know, drop off a bag of organics. And that's why I don't divert organics in the winter. I'm not going to drive across town all the time. And I'm one of those faithful organic people in the summer in our family. So it's going to kill diversion by just only having, you know, one place for other things too. Although I recognize the West End one, we've joked about how many county people are using it. It probably should be a joint municipal facility if it continues. And toxic waste, twice a year, I think is a major improvement. But at the same time, I think my compact fluorescents die at any time of the year. And I know that I must be one of the few who stockpiles them. Most people that I know in my own family, extended family, don't want to stockpile. They just throw it in the garbage. And the fact that there's mercury in it, well, oh, really? You know, like, whether they care or don't understand, I don't know. I'm not in everybody's head. But I know that's what goes on in the real world. And my little green thumb world or whatever, green heart world is, not realistic amongst many people. So I think there's massive education to help us change our behaviors. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll throw in some other points maybe after.
Councillor Wernicke?
I was going to bring up a very similar point to Councillor Ostindi, but what he mentioned actually sparked something in my memory. On back to the West End recycling facility, I'm always concerned with decisions that have good intentions, but then people being people, they don't react in the way you want them to. And I recall my friend, Councillor Ostindi, bad habit. You are my friend, but anyway.
Yeah, friend as well. Accepted.
Maybe even
Facebook friends.
Moving forward.
Yeah. Something he posted on Facebook in December was the removal of the black bins from the West End recycling facility, and posting commentary about a lot of styrofoam and other waste that just got thrown into the recycling bins. And I go, okay, are we running the risk of, in the attempt to save money by removing those bins, are we just making it so people now just throw their stuff that they would have thrown in the bins into recycling, creating even more problems? So I worry about, if we do close that facility, is the same thing going to happen? Are people just going to be like, the heck with this, I'll throw it in the garbage then, because I got a big box and I don't want to break it down, to go fit in my little bin in front of the house. I've lived in Nanaimo, Victoria, Kamloops, Vancouver, Calgary, Vernon a little bit. I've never been anywhere that didn't have a facility kind of similar to that, right? Like somewhere where you could take your big boxes or what have you, so you don't have to drive all the way across town. It just seems like an unusual choice and something I think we should reconsider. That's my comment. Thank you.
On the topic of recycling and diverting, I just want to keep an open mind as we eventually go on to the conversation of the lake and cleaning up the lake, because almost everything we're talking about is resident-based. I'm interested in taking this whole idea down to the lake, because we take in a ton of garbage down there and it all goes into the landfill. So maybe that's just an extension of what we're doing when we talk education, signage, but I think we have to keep an open mind to that part of our town too, because it's a massive amount in a short period of time, but we should probably deal with that as well. And the other thing I was just thinking, I do know that education is so important, and it's like, how do we retrain people? And the idea came to me that, it's the youth, the little people, that have the minds that are sponges, and you can teach simple concepts and they can take that home to their parents. And when they sell it in the schools, if we can do a simple rollout in the schools where the kids get engaged and you can do some fun exercises and you explain to them about your future, because it's their future, being invested in a greener future, they'll take that home and they might actually kind of help the parents with it. So just an idea.
Any comment, Tim?
Yeah, I didn't know there was so much to know in garbage and recycling, and I've been around the table a while, so I appreciate all the information. Lots there to do. I'm really, the exciting part for me is the implementation plan, and to see what that looks like and how we can roll that out to residents. And on the lines of communication, let's make it exciting, right? Let's get people involved somehow. I don't know, garbage carts in a parade. I don't know, something to make it fun and exciting, and to bring some awareness to it. But I'm really looking forward to the implementation plan and how this is all going to work out.
Cool. Teach? Anything?
Jazz, I'm kind of scared of you because you said you didn't want to go to 10 p.m. So
Okay. I have a comment before I go back to Megan, because I know she's got an annotated list that she still needs to go through. So one of the statistics in here that surprised me quite a bit was the growth trend, that in 2 years there was almost no increase in the tonnage collected on the curbside. That really surprised me, because we know that Sylvan's grown. So what that speaks to is the education piece. Because if you look at how recycling and organics increased, it's obvious that people are diverting more. So I think, you know, Holly's right. I think if you start off with the education programming at a young age, that programming gets home and things get better. So I think the better your communication plan is, the better your education plan is, the better the programs are. And I think we do, I think you guys do a brilliant job. As somebody who's used the facility, used the waste transfer site quite a bit this last year, I'm always impressed by how well it's run, how well it's put together, how easily it is to access. I would love more hours. There were times when I show up 15 minutes late, but you know, in all honesty, that's organization, and I think you guys have done a brilliant job. So I think continuing the education piece is huge, and I look at how it's worked. The numbers don't lie, and this is ridiculously impressive to, in 2 years with the growth that we've had, to go up by 4 tons, 6 tons, and you know, phenomenal. Megan?
Sorry for my long-windedness. When I knew this was coming back about a year ago, I have an entire tab in my notebook devoted to waste. So I've had a year of time to put my thoughts, and this is my shot. But there's not that much more. One was just a resident conversation I had, and Holly, it ties to your comment as well around lakeshore waste. And then you address it in the study, so I wasn't sure if this fit with this or the next item, but our recycle bins down on Lakeshore are not obviously identified. They are obvious when you're looking for it. It says recycle on it, but they're such a muted color that they really don't stand out differently. But as I was watching those cleaning it up last year, I learned that they just throw both bags into the truck. So I don't think that they're actually separated, our garbage and recycle. So I guess one of the things I was looking for, and it touched on this, but it didn't really, was how do we clearly identify, are we actually recycling on the lakefront? And as Councillor Bilodeau said, I think it's a great idea that we are. But if we're doing it, we need to actually do it. And I'm not sure that piece is currently happening. So maybe that's my question. Are we taking them to different places, our garbage versus recycle bins, or because there's so much contamination, is it all just garbage down there at this point?
Anything that's got a blue lid goes to the materials recoveries facility with no exceptions, correct, Darren? And anything with a black lid goes to the Red Deer landfill. So we have 2 different trucks. We don't pick them up in the same truck.
But just to be clear, those lids, the Lakeshore bins don't have those different color lids.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's our Parks Department. That's a question for Parks. Sorry. Ron is up next, and that's a good question for him. Sorry, I apologize. I meant the carts.
Yes, I very much believe that my home recycle is, but I'm just not sure if we're actually diverting that for our Lakeshore cans.
Sure, if I can just shout for back here. No, we haven't done any studies on what the cross-contamination is, but essentially the identified recyclable bins down there are mostly full of garbage, and so we have not been separating it.
So I guess that leads to, if we're not going to separate it, call them both garbage bins and let's not pretend.
If I can comment on that one, Deputy Mayor. It is on our summer discussion, and there is conversation around having a litter campaign to address that, including wrapping the recycling. And so there is a plan there if council supports it in the next discussion. Next one.
Wonderful.
Today.
Thank you. We can't have a solid waste discussion without talking about, is the drop and swap tent close?
Yeah, thank you. We have an update. Thank you for asking. The drop and swap structures that council approved back in November are delayed at the manufacturer, but we have secured a temporary structure that will be open end of the week. End of the week, there you go. And we will get that word out to the public. Thanks for bringing that up.
That is all I have for
That's
this
all.
list.
Okay,
Thank
Councillor Stindy has a follow-up question.
Comment and question. The one way we might want to create that excitement is if we let people know what has changed. So when we put it out there and we try and make change in our community, did it actually change? So that we report back and say, hey, we're making a difference. Kind of like Calgary with their water restrictions. We're 3% off. We just need to do a little more. You know, and then people know, okay, I am making a difference. One of the education pieces I think we do good education for, you know, what do I recycle? What can I recycle? And then you get to those mixed materials. And that's where I think we need to give more education, more information out to people so that, you know, you go to the website, you can get the basic information on what we recycle, what you can throw in the blue bin. And then it's like, well, what about a metal lid that's covered in plastic on the inside? You know, that's a mixed material. Should that go in garbage or do I throw that in recycling? You know, and I have no clue. And I've tried to figure that out myself. But there's a lot of mixed materials, and that's, I think, the fine tuning that's tough, and that will reduce contamination when we can, so people can go to one level of information, get the basics, but those weird people like me can go deeper and say, well, what do I do with a lid? What do I do with this? Is Tim Hortons cup a paper cup? And I know the answer to that one. It's not. It's a mixed material, and it should never be put in recycling. Most paper cups are not paper cups. They're plastic paper cups. So, you know, that's a fine tuning. The waste transfer site, I think the improvements that have happened there are great. And I see that, yes, in the next couple of years, we really do have to expand because it is getting busier and busier and busier. And last one ties in with parks actually is and culture. When we have special events, I think we could do a massive change in how we collect garbage at special events. So when a special event occurs, whether it's a Lions picnic or a town-based one, we could be giving them tons of bins, blue ones, black ones, and we divert and encourage that in our town, because for the most part, we just have garbage bins, and there's lots we could divert.
Cool.
Other little things. Thank you.
Mr. Watson, what do you need from us more?
I just need council to answer the question if this plan was presented back to them in a month or two with some grammar corrections and some cleaning up, if it would be adopted and it's in a position to be adopted by council.
Well, I think we have more discussion to have at that point, but I would be very confident that, you know, from what I see, at least from my position, I would be very comfortable with what you present.
Okay, so
Yeah,
nothing missing, no changes, as long as.
I don't believe so. Anyone else have a thought on that? No, your planning, as always, is quite complete.
Thanks.
So if you have everything you need from us, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I anticipate the next conversation is going to likely be a lengthy one, so we're going to take a break for 7 minutes and give Mr. Lebsack an opportunity to set up his PowerPoint and give everyone else an opportunity to get a stretch before the long haul. We have summer operations discussion, and Mr. Lebsack, we're going to, as we go through this, Ron, we're gonna stop and talk as we go, because there's a lot of stuff on here that we want to talk about. So as we go, we'll chop it up. Okay, so it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. As we know, and for anybody that scrolled through it, the presentation, there's a lot of information here, and we weren't sure kind of how to put it together in a concise format that also flowed and gave everybody a chance to ask those appropriate questions that needed to be asked. So not only can you interrupt and ask questions at any point in time, but there's also a question slide after certain topics that will kind of check back with council and make sure they don't have any questions on a specific topic, because again, it all kind of flows together and everything leads into another topic. So we'll try and make this as seamless as possible. Okay, so we're gonna touch on these different 7 items. Operating proposal and expected outcomes. So again, the continuing rise in summer lakefront traffic and concerns with cleanliness have resulted in administration proposing targeted capital and operational improvements. So this comes along with, last year was Brennan Couples, our parks manager, was his first year as the manager. So he kind of utilized the existing schedule, the existing plan, made it through the summer, and took notes the entire time through the summer. And so this is what we're presenting here today, and some of the items that we're talking about comes about from Brennan as to how he would like to redo his operational plan for the summertime. So that's partly why you'll see a lot of proposed activities in here too, not just a quick review of what we've done, but also proposed what we would like to do starting in 2026. Oh, I'll go back to this. And so again, I think I can, if I minimize this, am I going to wreck anything? Thank you. So again, what we'd like to just touch on here, the fine print at the bottom, or the small print there, is the washrooms being cleaned more frequently, you'll see, is a theme here. And that's going to give us greater cleanliness, but also lower vandalism likelihood. So again, we're trying to come up with outcomes, not just actions. Centennial Park washrooms upgrades, of course, we'll talk about that. And we have a few meetings ago. Garbage is emptied more frequently, which the outcome is going to be fewer overflows. And what we see downtown is a lot of times the garbage might not be totally full, but somebody had maybe an oversized bag that they can't fit in, so they throw it beside, so then everybody else just throws it beside too. So it's keeping those things cleaned up so that we're not creating kind of a trend or an action down there. And then the additional park staff and bylaw officers, again, as you can see there, just an overall more compliance, safer, and more respectful use of the space. So again, we're looking at outcomes, not just actions. What did I do? There we go. First one would be washrooms. So Summer Parks operations currently consists of 4 to 6 staff per shift, and they have these responsibilities. So this is just an outline as to where we were at in the past. Is we do the lakefront washroom, cleaning and maintenance, garbage collection and removal, and we look after the community playground inspections and maintenance down there. But we also do community parks washrooms, cleaning and maintenance, the community parks garbage collection and removal, the trails, garbage collection, and restocking of dog waste baggies. So that group of operators that's down along the lakefront kind of does parks operations for the entire town, not just the lakefront. So they are off of the lakefront a certain amount of the time. And the lakefront washrooms cleaning does fluctuate based on how busy the lakefront is, but on a typical busy day, we'll have staff in the washrooms literally 3 to 5 times a day. And real high peak times, and we concentrate our efforts on the lakefront, it'll be 5 to 7 times per day. So again, just to kind of an outline that we recognize we don't have full-time staff just dedicated to that lakefront. They're also looking after all the community parks. Lakefront washrooms 1 and 2, So currently, we're undergoing upgrades in Lakefront Washroom number 2, and then it'll move over to 1 here in the springtime, is replacing all those commercial partitions with cinder block walls. So when we built those washrooms, we put in the commercial partitions thinking that, you know, they're extra strength, heavy duty ones, and they still didn't stand up to some of the activities that go on down there. So we're replacing them with cinder block walls and steel doors, and we have steel TP holders, paper towel holders if we have any paper towel, those kinds of things. Soap dispensers, that's what I was looking for. We're going to paint off the lower probably 4 feet of the walls to a darker color. Again, originally everything was painted in there an off-white or a white, make it nice and bright in there, but we realized that it just gets really marked up. So we're going to try and utilize that. I mean, I just realized it, but almost what we've done here in council chambers, where the bottom portion of the dark walls are darker. And we're also creating staff room and storage areas in the men's washrooms at both sites. So that'll also have staff located at those areas more often. And we won't be leaving the lakefront to go get supplies. Again, I don't have a quantity number in terms of how many supplies we go through in a day or in a weekend. But we can't store enough down there in the existing little utility rooms that we have. We're running back to the mob to pick up supplies during a shift. So this will alleviate that, and we'll be able to concentrate our staff just on the lakefront. So that's our focus with a couple of things here on the lakefront is we will have staff dedicated to the lakefront all the time. They'll report in the morning to the lakefront because there'll be a staff room there. They'll report to the lakefront in the morning, and they will be at the lakefront the whole time during their shift. Centennial Park washrooms, we talked about these upgrades earlier. We have a capital project already in 2026 to upgrade the water and septic to make it year-round operations. We've received one price in already on it, and although we still have 2 more to come, and we'll see what they come in at, we are quite happy with the first one in terms of what money would be left out of that budget in order to add additional, we'll call it capacity. Whether that's a precast washroom that's dropped in there, or try and add on something, whether it's a stick-built wooden washroom or facility, something like that. But we will have money to add capacity in there, so we're quite pleased with when the initial quote came in at. I think that's perfect time for questions and discussions around washrooms.
Mayor Hanson.
I would love to, my hope out of this, just being fully transparent, is that we have a service level policy that specifically says between June and August, on Saturdays and Sundays that are predicted to be over 20 degrees, the 4 main washrooms on Lakefront are checked hourly between the hours of 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. And I want to know how much that's going to cost us. And the reason why I want that really just in black and white, this is how many times it happens on a hot Saturday or Sunday, is then we can tell residents when they're complaining about this to say they are checked every single hour. There's a log on the wall that says there has been eyes on this by our staff. Is it cleaned every hour? If it doesn't need it, absolutely not. But I'm really curious on the dollar amount on that, and I want to see that so specifically outlined in a policy. And the hour could change by 1 or 2 or the, temperature, but is that a possibility, and could that be done within the staffing requests that is further down in the proposal?
Through the chair, Madam Mayor, if I can get you to repeat that again so that I can get all the details down, we will certainly get that information back in terms of a service level.
Sure.
Okay.
So my thought is that there's a policy that states that the 4 washrooms on Lakefront, so Centennial, Lakefront Park, and Washroom 1 and 2, are checked a minimum of once hourly between June and August on Saturdays and Sundays between 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. On date, and the temperature, I put over, when the temperature is predicted to be over 20 degrees. I don't know exactly what that benchmark would look like and how far out. But there is some weather variance on that. Obviously, you don't need to check that washroom 10 times a day if we're in the middle of a downpour, but anytime we have reasonable weather, June through August, I'd like to see a standard set for whatever hours we determine. But
Okay, through the chair, yes, we can certainly get that information back to you. Yeah.
And then sort of piggybacking off of that, I do have a question about, because you mentioned in your presentation that staff are not just dedicated to the lakefront. Do we have any staff that are sort of dedicated to the bathrooms? Because that seems to be something that someone could realistically have more or less as a full-time job.
Through the chair, at this point in time, up until this year, no, we did not have anybody dedicated just to the washrooms. I'm going to reserve my comment on that until we get through the entire presentation and hear other comments around lakefront operations. But that would be our intention with our new operational plan, is to have dedicated staff to washrooms and garbages down there.
Just in terms of feedback, and I won't say this in each area, but for sure the comments made, I want to support them, this increase in service level. Certainly we had a chance to hear from the public in the election period. There was a strong interest, of course it's not universal in the strict definition of the word, but we heard often discussion about the lakefront, service levels. They also want us, I believe, to look at revenue streams, which we will be as well, to match that. But what I'm going to say right now, with regards to what, I'm going to say Ron, what has been said here is something I want to back up and vote in favor of, spending more money on this kind of service level. And then we'll get the stronger details that Mayor Hansen has just referred to help us say exactly what service level, but definitely a strong interest in supporting this specific initiative that you're talking about. I really like the theme that has been brought forward in this report, with the idea that we're trying to find efficiencies of how we work, so that the staff isn't running around town trying to get more supplies. And it will take some investment to do that, but to think from this day forward, every year, we're going to be saving hundreds of hours that can be put into service rather than running around. So I like that design. There's a lot of design ideas in this that I really want to support.
Good. I think that's washrooms.
Thank you. Moving on to garbage collection. Again, current situation, here's what we have for we talk about collection and removal. So removal, in our definition here, is going to be the issue, is that we collect lots of garbage off the lakefront, but we have to get it off the lakefront as well. So currently we have 4-yard dumpsters, and they're located at 2 locations. We have 2 of the dumpsters in the parking lot by the Lakeshore Drive lift station, which is the one right off 44th Street there in the parking lot. And we have 3 dumpsters in the lakefront parking lot. I did make a note. A 4-yard bin typically holds 40 large garbage bags. Those will be full by 1:30, 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon sometimes, depending on the traffic down there. And then we're trucking garbage off of the lakefront to the waste transfer station or to the mob to throw into large dumpsters. So again, taking members away from the lakefront from 20 to 30 minutes. Our recommendation here is we're going to add additional garbage, and we're going to add additional garbage receptacles. So we have 6 to 10 additional provincial style receptacles, which is the old bear-proof ones. Everybody understands those ones. Those are larger. And so we like to add those down in the actual green spaces of the park because it looks too cluttered when you start adding a whole bunch of the smaller ones in there. So we put the larger ones in there, and then the smaller ones, which are the ones with the fake wooden around them and the foot pedal and the little entrance, we add those up along the trail system a lot more, just to catch people as they're walking along the trail. And we have 6 additional of those. The company's called Wishbone. We have 6 additional in the yard right now that we would be putting out, and we'll see from a budget perspective how many more we could get into there. Now I see the next one would be, so the other one we would do is instead of those 4-yard dumpsters, we would add one 30-yard dumpster in 2 locations. And one in the same 2 locations, but we would make 30-yard dumpsters instead. So again, right off the website, it says, as opposed to a 4-yard bin is going to take 40 large garbage bags, a 30-yard dumpster is going to do 300 large bags. So our estimation is we will fill up each one of those, like if we have a dumpster at each end of the park, which is what we're looking at more or less, we will fill that up in the weekend. So it'll keep us there all weekend, and our staff will be dedicated to the lakefront all weekend, but we'll be emptying them every Monday morning. That's how much garbage we pull off the lakefront in a weekend, on a typical busy weekend. So those are the two things. Now again, to go along with the new 30-yard dumpsters, what we have to do is we have to create some infrastructure that will design to allow for staff to drive next to the bins and throw the garbage in safely at about waist height. So we find out already now you can't throw 300 large garbage bags over your head over the side of a 30-yard bin every weekend. First of all, staff can't do it, and second of all, if they try to do it, they're going to be injured and they're going to be off, and we won't have staff anyway. So there's a design out there that we've already seen that would allow us to actually, almost like a little makeshift ramp, drives up to the side, gets you not at foot level so you can fall in, but at about waist level, throw the bags off the side, and then either, depending on each location, will be different. One, you might have to back down. The other one, you'll be able to loop around and get back down off of it with our little vehicles. So that's kind of the other infrastructure component that goes along with those 30-yard dumpsters. But again, from that, it's about efficiency and keeping our people on the lakefront throughout their shift and not running back and forth to the yard or to the waste transfer site emptying garbages. Yes, okay, so there's operational impact right there.
Yeah.
Garbage collection.
Just a quick question. When you look at the design for that very large 30-yard dumpster, look at having locks, because when you increase the capacity for garbage, you're going to attract people to want to get rid of things, right? So we should be able to lock it.
Mm-hmm. Ian?
I like the efficiency thinking in this again. Because we're in a park, you know, ideally in my mind, I'd love to see visual barriers around garbage bins that are that industrial looking. But in the minimum, especially in the first year and, you know, building up and trying this model out, just making sure we have really clean looking bins, because it's one thing to look at a rusty old beat up, you know, bin versus a fresh painted. And I know that would probably rely on the company that we buy it from or lease it from or have that service with, but just the attention to detail, especially in a high profile park, rather than we're not talking about the light industrial area where you expect to see the odd thing that looks a little rougher.
Megan?
Kind of a carryover comment of just, I had noted that we need a rebrand of our recycle bins, whether they're obvious recycle or whether we're not recycling, then let's call them garbage bins. But then my secondary question is, do we need recycle dumpsters if we now have bins and we're actually doing recycle collection? And how have we factored that into the time needed to go off-site? If we don't have recycle dumpsters, then we would need to take those bins to the waste transfer site.
Through the chair, I'm going to start. I think I've got a few comments here right now. So to Councillor Bilodeau, the people dumping extra garbage in there is certainly one thing. The other one, before somebody mentions it to us, is we would like to cover them and lock them as well for birds and animals. So we've talked about that, is if we leave them uncovered overnight, you'll come back to a mess the next day anyway, regardless. So very good points there. Yes, what's the word I'm looking for? Like covering around them, disguising them. Certainly if some screening, yes, certainly.
Aesthetically
something
pleasing.
that we would need to do, because I don't think we want to rely on the delivery company to give us nice, cleany, shine bins every time. So we'll have to make sure we take care of that ourselves. And then to Mayor Hansen, I think that is going to take some more effort and thought on our part if we're going to do that. Not that we can't, but that certainly wasn't part of this proposal at this point in time, so we just have to put some more thought into it. I'm thinking what we would need is at least one more container, one more large container for recycling. And I think we would want to redo the kind of look or acceptance of our recycling bins, more so to be bottles, cans. I think if we expect people to be recycling or separating papers and plastics and glasses and that kind of thing down there, I think we're just going to end up with the same thing, which is a whole lot of everything all in the same bin. So we'll have to put some more thought into that. But if that's what council would like us to do, we'll certainly look into how we can manage a recycling program down on the lakefront.
Tim?
Yeah, I love the idea, Mayor Hansen. There's a lot to do and implement in 1 year. I'd be happy to see this program roll out the way that it's been explained, and based on that, okay, year 2, how do we do that recycle? If we can see some massive success in this, and that's been taken care of, then I would be happy to see something come back next year in the recycle side. But I think the challenge of, I'll be honest, I have a hard time doing it at home. So to do it on the beach, I think it would be tough.
Joe?
This wasn't what I was originally going to ask or comment on, but I would just second what Councillor Mern said. Like, I'd rather just get rid of the illusion that people are going to recycle and ditch the thought entirely. Just make them waste bins for now because they're not being used for recycling in any event. That's just my comment on that. But my more question for the 30-yard bins is where I was actually going to go. Anticipating continued growth, do we have the infrastructure or plan in place on what would end up happening if we had to empty those bins not on a Monday? Like, do we have the ability on a Saturday evening to go and empty them in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, we do. So, well, I guess I would say currently we do through our service provider, and we would just confirm that with the larger bins, but we do get them emptied on Sunday mornings currently. So I'm assuming we would be able to do the same thing, is having them emptied on a Sunday morning. Yeah.
Megan?
I'll just add to that round of comments. I am also okay if that's a many-year phased-out plan. My ask would be then this year, let's just change the labels on them and call them trash, if that's what they are. Because I do think it's confusing. And I've had a couple of times where I've had something to recycle and the garbage, or the recycle one's been full, but the garbage hasn't. And it just makes it a bit more challenging. My other comment I just wanted to note is I think more of an optics problem than anything else, but I guess I'm curious if there's a way to get around the fact that everything needs to be done in pairs. And I want to say I completely recognize that that is what needs to happen for all enforcement activities for safety. But I do wonder if working in zones might create a different look than always having 2 people empty trash bins together, because it is frustrating to watch when things are overflowing and it takes one person to unlock the key and the other to take the bag out. And I'm not sure that that is always needed. Are we required to do that through OH&S, or is there a way to divide and have those working in zones so that you always have a buddy and there's a system for that without having 2 people do a job that might really need 2 people, but optically we're getting, at least I received a lot of feedback that often it doesn't look like it might need 2 people.
Through the chair, I really wanted to make a joke about that, but I won't. Yes, I believe that's part of the current operating plan that we're working on, would be to, I'll call it kind of divide and conquer, where you're still working in pairs, but one of them's doing garbage in the vicinity of the washroom and one of them's doing the washroom at the same time. So you're still in close enough vicinity to each other that you might have some radio contact or some eye contact, but you're not, as you say, 2 people as a pair going around doing things. So yes, that is in the plan.
And I think with that, there's also a safety and security concern. You know, I think you're, as town employees on the lakeshore at that time, you're approached pretty much constantly as well. You're not just down there doing your job. You're often representing the community. And, you know, having had a couple of sons who worked that job in the summer, there are a lot of times when you're put in kind of uncomfortable situations. And being by yourself, I would feel, you know, I would feel very disconcerted by that, you know, strictly from that perspective.
So again, through the chair, yes, and that's why we would, I mean, certainly that is a reality down there, but that's why we would also do them kind of in zones or kind of in that divide and conquer type idea where you're still within, you know, visual sight lines of each other or something like that. We don't just send one off to one end of the park and one off to the other end of the park, but also splitting them up as well to do two different things at the same time. You know, from that impression standpoint, yes.
Any other thoughts? Excellent. Well, you do have, sorry.
Speaking of everything garbage and the lake and the summer, I just want to put emphasis on, I think we really need to do a better job or create a job out of education for the tourists that are coming to town. Know before you go, you know, respect the lake, you bring it, take it. You know, I really think whether that's signage or social media or messages, we need to really encourage people to respect our town. If you're bringing the garbage, take it with you or dispose of it properly. I think we really need to up that message to go along with the positive changes, and I think they'll all work hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. So through the chair, I'd really love to throw my friend, Mr. Waldo, into this one, but yeah, we do. So what we identify during this plan is that we have two different ways of communicating. We're going to communicate to the residents, and we're going to communicate to the visitors. And what comes out of this discussion and what kind that comes out of budget dollars we'll kind of formulate that plan. But we do recognize that there's two different communication plans that we need. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, for the out-of-town people, the tourists, the social media won't work, so the signage is definitely something we would want to think about, just because, you know, when the Town of Sylvan Lake Facebook page puts out something and it's like, hey, you're not allowed to tent here, which obviously we're going to talk about, nobody sees that nobody from Calgary, Edmonton's following our social media pages or cares. So I think that's an important thing, to get some sort of signage. Whether people listen to that or not is, you know, up for debate, but I think at least having it there, and I guess we're going to talk about the bylaw here too, and having a stronger enforcement is important too, but we definitely want to go beyond social media, and only the people in Sylvan actually see our social media, so I think that's important to know.
Tim?
I'll add to that, Councillor Johannesson, but we have a ton of metrics that show most of our site visits are from Calgary and Edmonton. So I think it is important to have it on there as a big presence because we've got a ton of metrics. Yeah, not unimportant, I'm just saying. Yeah, we do have the metrics to show that it does make a difference too, so yeah.
I'm gonna take a second just to look to make sure no more latent hands are coming up. Okay, that is garbage collection and removal. On to beach maintenance.
All right, on to beach maintenance. This will be a quick one. So beach maintenance in our schedule in 2025 was 2 times per week. We had a very small rake behind our tractor. And with the influx of sand that we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years, we had a very small rake and a very small tractor and 3 or 4 young summer students out there trying to get it all cleaned up. Thanks to council, that will change this year. We'll know more once we receive our new beach groomer and tractor, but it'll do at least, at a minimum, it's going to do 4 times the job that our previous unit did. So, and it also dumps it. So again, regardless of which brand we buy, it cleans it and then it hydraulically picks it up, dumps it in the truck, goes back to cleaning again. So we don't have the bodies down there shoveling it up and cleaning it up as well. So that'll, again, save a lot of time for us, but also a lot of effort in terms of the summer staff sitting there cleaning up seaweed and sand and stuff, so, yeah. I'm guessing none?
Don't think there's a whole lot of questions about beach maintenance. I think one thing that came up last year, I had a couple of people, the beach maintenance is not just in that area closest to the pier, but what they've noticed is the beach is expanding significantly further east. And there didn't seem to be a lot of the same work done further east. So hopefully we're taking into account the entirety of that space, because people are moving further down the beach side because the water comes in a little further. So it just, you know, when you're making plans, it's everywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, that's certainly something that we consciously noticed last year, is that we weren't getting to those areas. But with the new equipment, we have every intention of getting down there. The other thing it'll help somewhat smooth out some of those little pockets of water. So you won't have a little pocket of water and then some sand and then another, you know, which is what we found last year. And again, our little tractor it doesn't go through those pockets of water. It gets stuck. So our intention is definitely to do a much better job of it this year, right from end to end.
Cool. Okay, no comments on beach maintenance. Excellent. Additional staffing.
Additional staffing, yes. So again, kind of looping back again, but we'll go through kind of what we currently have and what our recommendation is, or our request is for the upcoming year. So Parks Department is requesting additional staffing in order to increase the service level along the lakefront. Again, it'll be 3 additional full-time staff, 5 additional seasonal staff. And again, when you look at these kind of names, it might not make sense, but we explain it kind of on the last page of the staffing area here as to how it is going to create efficiencies. And also municipal enforcement is requesting an additional 2 seasonal bylaw officers, which also relates to our paid parking program, which will come up in a little bit. Currently, we have 5 full-time staff in the areas: turf, landscaping, Pogattle Park and Campground, sports fields, and parks and playgrounds. So the parks and playgrounds operator is responsible for all parks and playgrounds within the community, including the lakefront operations with garbage collection, washroom cleaning, and beach maintenance. And we touched on that on the very first slide. And they're doing everything else in all the community parks as well in that same area. Turf is responsible for the mowing and trimming of the entire community, including along the lakefront. We would keep that up because our turf crew, we only have so many mowers, and they're very, efficient in terms of doing their loops. So we would keep the turf down on the lakefront and then just dedicate the remaining lakefront staff to the lakefront as opposed to going out into other communities. And how we would accomplish this is by, if we were to add a cemeteries, Lions Park, and we call it legacy parks, Cenotaph and a few places like that, operator, they'd be able to relieve the responsibilities from the lakefront crew, allowing more time to be focused on lakefront washrooms, cleaning, garbage collection, and doing cemeteries ground maintenance. So that would, as opposed to our lakefront crew being off, doing something else in the community, they would just stay on the lakefront. Same with playground trails and operator, would relieve the responsibility on playground inspections, cleaning, and maintenance from the lakefront crew. Realistically, if we had a full-time operator in this, they would be able to cover the community as a full-time operator, and then possibly pull one of our roving operators, seasonal operators, most typically a high school student for July and August, to do some of the other maintenance when it's in the high season. But they could typically do this, one operator full-time throughout the week. The arborist, again, relieve the responsibility on tree inspections and maintenance from the lakefront crew. So not that they're doing a lot of the actual inspections, but we have one operator right now who has a horticulture degree. We'll go out and do the role of the arborist most times, and then whenever there's a job to do where they're taking down dangerous tree, limbing a tree, something happened during a windstorm, they're pulling operators from somewhere because it's just a single person on that crew, would be pulling operators typically off the lakefront crew. Pretty much it's the lakefront or the turf crew that you're pulling operators from, your seasonal operators from. And so by adding an arborist on there, the arborist would be able to do that inspection work and then utilize the horticulturalist as the two-man crew to go and do the actual tree work, which is more specialized work. And sometimes seasonal staff don't quite understand exactly what they're supposed to be doing. So by adding an arborist and a horticulturalist, they'd be able to manage all those arborist duties themselves. And then, and then this lakefront operator, which again, we're saying existing, but I'm just showing how this would split that up. So then with the additional operators, would now be the lakefront operator would be responsible for washroom, cleaning, garbage collection and removal, and beach grooming only. And the lakefront full-time operator would not be out in the community doing other community parks, playgrounds, trails, that kind of thing as well. So we would have our full-time operator plus full-time seasonal crew just focused on the lakefront, and they wouldn't have to leave the lakefront.
Joel?
Staffing question in relation to bylaw request first. Did you want to table that until we're talking about the bylaw enforcement issues? Okay, so I'll push that off. But for the request for the additional full-time kind of year-round people, do you know when the current staffing level was set? Like, has that changed in the last few years?
So we've had 4 full-time operators for probably the last, starting 10 years ago, and we added a 5th full-time operator 2 years ago.
Okay, so there hasn't been a dramatic change.
Not a dramatic change. No, we've added 4 seasonal operators, I think, over the last, well, we've added 8 seasonal operators over the last 3 seasons. But again, from a full-time standpoint, yeah, it's been 10 years and then 2 years ago.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
So what do you envision the additional staff doing year-round then? Because I imagine they're not mowing grass in December.
Correct. So year-round operations would include, so the horticulturalist and the arborist would still do most of the tree maintenance and everything during the winter. That's a big time for them for doing that. Our turf lead operator and our Pogattle Park lead operator would head up, and the playgrounds operator would head up most of the, just those 2 would head up most of the trail maintenance and playground inspections, playground, we'll call them inspections, but the informal inspections, doing maintenance and things, because they're busy all year round. The lakefront person would still just be on the lakefront all season long, and cemeteries and the other ones would just fill in and help out. So they would, again, be doing trail maintenance, snow clearing after snowstorms, a few other those things, covering for people when they're on holidays. But 5 of those 6 would have specific duties, and that cemeteries person would just help with the planning and help with coverage on other shifts.
Ian?
Yeah. Several of you know I'm an advocate for park staff because I'm of the opinion that we do not service our parks well enough, and that, you know, we have trees with what are known as, if you picture a tree in your backyard and from the roots you get those suckers coming up. We have many town trees where the suckers are bigger than the tree because they've never been maintained, and I'm not joking. The suckers are bigger than the tree by volume of wood. And it's because we lack that expertise. And, you know, as a young guy who has worked in parks, you know, until my dad taught me, the horticulturist, you know, I wouldn't know what to do. And so that's really important. And looking at the time frame you talked of in terms of since when have we really had significant increase in park staff, you know, it's been next to 0, like 1 is next to 0. And yet in the last, say, 15 years in our town, we've added another 1,000 acres to our town. So, you know, and you need more maintenance. And I like that we're looking at different equipment and things like that too, because then you don't have to hire as much staff when you have good equipment. So these kind of investments are critical. And of course, we'll get down to the budget later in the year and we'll see how much we can say, yeah, we can pull it off or we can't. But same with the service level of the lake. We want to go for the best model, and we'll debate the money afterwards. But yeah, I strongly advocate for this hiring plan because it will bring the service level of our parks up to. And it isn't, to me, you know, we talk about being resident focused and visitor friendly. We shouldn't just focus on the lakefront. I want a beautiful park across the street from my house as well, and that means resident focused. It's not just about the lakefront.
Well, I think I'll echo what Councillor Stindy has just said. Having been somebody who's, the cemeteries have taken on a new importance for me, but I'm always very impressed by how good of a job you guys do. Like it's always plowed, it's always clear, it's always easy to access, and in the summer it's you know, it's always what it needs to be. So, but I do think that having more staff, one of the things that we heard over and over again in the election is how important it is to clean up the lakefront. It's going to cost money. If you want it to be the beautiful, welcoming, accepting place that you want it to be, it's going to cost money. So as we go forward, I agree with Councillor Stindy. I think bringing people in to better the service levels and using the right equipment to make it a simpler job is how you make it better. So all of this, when we get to budget, will be debated and be tossed around and conversed on, and you know, at that point is when we decide. Mayor Hansen?
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think they're all good things. We're really due for this increase. We probably should have been doing this a bit more incrementally over time. It comes down to a budget decision, of course. For new council, we're going to talk about budget a little bit later, but these will all come back as a separate line item for us to debate individually, and we'll be able to look at the overall budget at the same time. So I think tonight we're probably just looking for, you know, is that even reasonable for us to consider what has been outlined here or not? Mm-hmm. And I just want to give a bit of contrast, but also share my passion for the cemeteries position. One of the most impactful meetings I've had this year was with a couple of residents who came and talked about cemetery condition, and I went later that week and took a walk around and have done it many times since then. And although many things in our cemeteries were in great shape, it was a little bit horrifying to see some of the sunken in graves, some of the overgrown ones that weren't able to be mowed because of the different levels they were at, and we had a number of meetings, and it's improved tremendously, but we didn't actually staff it to improve to that. It was just, I know that Parks was able to redistribute some of their resources to eliminate that problem, but that was a Band-Aid to get us through the end of this season. I know we need some additional resources in there, and if there's one place in our community that should be just kept to a higher standard of every other park in our community, it certainly is our cemeteries, and I didn't see that that same level of success that we see in other places. So I do think that position is really important, because we have done that Band-Aid patchwork, but that's not sustainable without, of course, putting someone who's responsible for that area and take some pride in what can happen there. Looking forward to discussing it in budget, but I think it's a reasonable proposal without having the numbers attached to it.
Any other comments, questions around staffing? Okay, that's staffing.
Okay, we've also been asked about the Beach Ambassador Program, or as we call it, a reimagined Beach Ambassador Program. We looked at it from two different lenses. One was a fully staffed option, which again, you can see the idea there would only be probably a Thursday through Sunday, 2 people on at the same time, and running May through August. We also talked about a volunteer program that was brought up at a previous council. We looked at it, got input from the volunteer center. We did provide the details of it there. However, I will take you to the bottom of the page where even the volunteer program, the volunteer center, finds that this would be very, very hard to staff through volunteers. We don't believe we would be able to get the staff to make this program work at a volunteer level. So realistically, the fully staffed option is the one that would even be possible. And so we've provided the outline there as to what that might look like.
Sorry, still reading. Apologize. Ms. Phillips.
I just wanted to, I thought it would be worth adding, this was a notice of motion from Councillor Parsons.
Yes.
I'm really interested in a blended option here. One, I see the fully staffed option, and I really don't think it's necessary on Thursdays and Fridays. I think this is strictly a 16-week program on Saturdays and Sundays, potentially even with some limited hours. But if this program ran even just afternoons, but you know, ideally for those full days, 2 days a week, I think that that would be an incredible improvement to our downtown when it comes to education around what is allowed and what isn't, and how we promote our community. I see a lot of benefits there, but I'm also interested in, just because you have staff doesn't mean you can't also see if we can get volunteers, knowing we have staff as a backup. But there is certainly more than one location. There could be some, you know, walking around distribution of materials. There could be other ways to do this. If you asked for volunteers, and if you got 2 of them even for a really limited portion of that, that could just supplement the program in an additional way. But I am interested in this, just I don't think 4 days is, that's like the Cadillac version, and I'm looking for the minivan.
Tim?
When Councillor Parsons brought this forward, you know, and my thoughts were to have more bodies down there. He'd mentioned, you know, they can check on a washroom, they can do this, part of that as being an ambassador. If we're going to be looking at approving budget for additional staff, we're going to have additional bodies down there. There's nothing stopping them to have something, you know, in their UTVs with information if someone asks them. So I don't know if this is something, you know, that I would want to see forward on a staffing cost on a full-time basis. Maybe a little bit of a mix of volunteer, but if we're going to add additional staff down there that are down there all day, every day, over the weekends and stuff like that, I would opt out on this one.
Joe?
One quick question. Sorry to circle back to the bylaw officers we're going to get to after. How much does one bylaw officer cost annually, roughly?
You're referring to a seasonal bylaw officer?
Yeah.
4-month seasonal?
Yeah.
I want to say we put about 18,000 in the budget per officer.
Okay. Yeah. So my thinking on this role, and I'm probably maybe off base, but is I like the idea of somebody being an ambassador for the beach and the rules and the cleanliness and our community, rather than, and I mean no disrespect to our bylaw officers because they're nice people, but then someone coming over in a uniform, you know, saying, you can't do this here. You can't do that here, there's a ticket. I think it sends a much more positive message to tourists, and I think it would have a lot better of an education impact on people who are visiting our town. So when I look at the cost of it, I know we're not getting in the budget, but when I look at it from that perspective, I mean, you're basically breaking even on 2 new bylaw officers and doing the same thing without the enforcement aspect of it. So I in my head, I go, okay, well, which is more effective? Or which sends the signal that I think we would want to send as a town if you're considering one option or the other? Maybe we're not doing that, but that's my thinking.
Tim?
Different train of thought. I don't mind enforcement because that news travels fast. So different way of thinking for sure. You know, if someone gets a $100 ticket for smoking or drinking on the beach or whatever, and that news hits, might be a good deterrent for everyone else. So just a different train of thought on that. I don't mind the enforcement aspect of it. I know we've got lots of discussion coming up on different aspects of what we want to see down there, but I think it's time for some enforcement. That's my opinion.
Teach.
I was actually going to say the same thing. I'm just kind of not interested in playing nice with people that openly break the bylaws of the town. I think we need to be firm and hard on these people so that it doesn't happen again. I was clear about this when I campaigned as well. I think that I think being nice to people that don't care, you know, whoever we get to do this, whether it be a volunteer or a person or, you know, some nice old lady or whoever it might be, is not deterring people to obey the bylaws of our beach. I'm not looking to be nice to people that don't want to be nice to our beach. As far as this program goes, I'm kind of with Megan in the fact that I think a Saturday, Sunday is probably a better option. Obviously, that's probably when we get our most people here and save us a little money. I'd rather spend money on enforcement and really just a black and white. You don't get a warning anymore. You know, we've been giving warnings for 10 years or 20 years or however long we've been doing this. So I'm kind of done with that. Just as a whole, people need to respect our beach, and we have to respect our beach by making people respect our beach. So that's kind of where I'm at with that, and I think I would agree on with Megan on this. Is just can we have a blended option? If that's an option, that would be kind of where I would go with that.
Ian?
Just thinking about blended options, if we're using a staffed version, you know, focusing on the busiest times, we're saying the Saturday, Sundays, or long weekends, whether they be typically a Monday. What if these staff members were also the supplements to some of the key hot spots, being, say, bathroom checks, bathroom cleanups, in between other staff that are working on it as well? I wonder about that as a hybrid model where we're supplementing, creating more visits to those high maintenance areas. It also makes a job more worthwhile for me to apply to. I'm not saying I'm going to, but I just think about as a young person or an older person applying for a job in our park, in our waterfront. Oh, you got this duty and that duty, and you got a mix of duties. Without having to be everything in one employee. That's the other extreme. So I think about what would it look like as a hybrid?
Yeah, I have never been too big of a supporter of this program because I think what's required on the beach and what the reality is not always aligned. I think what's required down there is somebody who can direct, but more importantly, can represent the intentions of what the town wants. And I don't know if the beach ambassador program is really going to be very effective when you have 50,000 people on the beach. I think in thinking about this from the the bylaw perspective, from the bylaw officer perspective, if we're spending this kind of money on a beach ambassador program, I'd much prefer to have, much along the lines of what Councillor Mearns and Councillor Johannesson are saying, have individuals who are working to enforce the bylaw, working to enforce the standards. I just can't imagine spending $40,000 on the beach ambassador program. I do think that a volunteer program on the weekends, especially on nice days, would be a little easier to staff than is implied. But this kind of money, I just don't see the value in it personally. But Holly?
I like the idea of a blended model. I just would like to shift it, or the idea of shifting it, which would be fully staffed, but not nearly to the tune of $40,000. So looking at having a beach ambassador, I just think if we go to any level of change that we might get to after we have further discussions for the beach, in other words, tents, barbecues, and so on, we may actually have enough changes that we might want to have this summer. A little bit of an investment for education for the changes and to keep the peace, but I would balance that fully staffed with increased enforcement, rather than maybe take the, I don't know if this is the volunteer year, to put energy into bringing in volunteers. There might be just too much change, and it could cause some concern down there, because if you take something away that people have had in the past, it might, might cause problems. So increase enforcement, but a little bit of a beach ambassador program is the balance I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I do think they're two totally different functions, ambassadors versus enforcement. We absolutely need more enforcement. This is a nice to have, and I would like to have it. I also, knowing all of the other changes, I would be okay if we talked about a reduced program next year in the budget cycle and we tried out all the other things in terms of prioritizing all of the changes we're suggesting. This one wasn't the top of the list in terms of things to address, but I do think there's value in those visitor resident services. Having spent I did a shadow with the RCMP a couple of years ago down on the lakefront on a busy summer day. And what I realized was our enforcement and our RCMP officers, most of what they're doing on the lakefront has nothing to do with enforcement. It's not that there weren't things to enforce, it's that they are bombarded with questions with, I can't find my child, with, I can't figure out where to go wash off my feet, like all of these questions. And I just wonder if it might free up some enforcement time. But we don't want to lose this one completely if it's not a conversation we're entertaining this year. I think it would be very reasonable to say this is a back burner item. Let's talk about it after we've done the other things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on.
Will you speak to the dynamics of bylaw before we get more into the tents and whatnot, or at the end? In terms of enforcement and what that means?
I was
just with all the questions.
Yep, I was just thinking that, but we can add that right now. So we did hear a number of comments about enforcement, and we want more enforcement, and we need more enforcement down there. So I guess my question to council, or the feedback from council would be nice, is do we want more enforcement down there? And I don't want to sound like I'm pushing one way or the other, but knowing that we're going to get much more feedback, probably from residents, about how much enforcement is down there. And the way I look at it is, or the way we look at it in municipal enforcement is, we don't have the ability, if we're going to do more enforcement, if the direction is, hey, listen, we need to make sure that we do more enforcement down there, we don't have the ability to say, well, we're going to do more enforcement on tourists, but we're not going to do more enforcement on residents.
I think it's
we're going to do more enforcement on everybody. And I think just to throw it out there, the reality is going to be, there's going to be much more feedback from residents about more enforcement down there. And as long as we're willing to accept that and understand that that's coming our way, then certainly that's our job, and we will do and follow through with the direction of council. But that was just kind of a conversation we had, was that definitely we're going to hear more from residents if we want to kind of move towards more of an enforcement model.
Well, Ms. Phillips, then I have a comment after.
Sorry, if I can also add, and also a little bit on if it's a littering, for instance, ticket, and it's somebody that doesn't live here, how we would collect. Maybe on that. And even maybe a little bit on something like littering, how challenging a ticket that is. Yeah. Might be helpful.
Right. So, yeah, so littering is a great example as to how challenging it is to actually lay a fine for littering, because the way it happened about 3 summers ago, we laid a few littering tickets, and when we went to court, one of them got challenged. The judge's questioning was literally, did you see him litter? Yes. What did he do afterwards? He walked away. Did you see him drive away in his vehicle? No. Then how do you know he wasn't coming back to pick that up afterwards? So that honestly was the conversation in court. So littering is a great example as to how hard it is to give a littering ticket. Now again, in my opinion here, we would be willing to take that chance, and if we lay 10 littering tickets and have to go to court for 2 and get them thrown out, then I guess so be it. But just to be totally upfront, that is how hard it is to lay a littering ticket. Now, the other thing we would do if we were to lay a littering ticket is we would, there's 2 ways of looking at it, is you give them a municipal, what's called a municipal tag, then we get 100% of that fine when it's paid. Or we give them a provincial ticket, which we get 70% of that fine when it's paid. If we give them a municipal tag and they don't pay it, then typically they get away with it. If we give them a provincial ticket and they don't pay that fine, then it gets collected next time they go to renew their registration. So there's a lot of different moving parts there, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for council too, that certainly if moving away from an educational model to an enforcement model is something we want to do, just wanted to make sure that we kind of had all the nuances out there of how our enforcement officers think of things and how they lay different tickets versus tags based on situations.
I think I've always been an advocate of education. I've always been education first. We need to make sure we inform and inform appropriately. But over the course of the last couple of years, watching what's happening on the beach in terms of littering, in terms of just straight disrespect of the environment, in terms of people deciding that they're going to do what they want to do regardless of what the bylaw is or what the instructions are, what the standards are, has led me to think that education is now falling on deaf ears. I'm really of the mind personally, and I'm sure everyone else will have their opinion. I'm of the mind that at this point, I believe that the message that needs to be sent is there is a standard. There's a standard that we will accept and there's a standard that we won't. And if that standard means we collect 70% of that intention, then so be it. But sending the message is the part for me more clearly. The monetary piece isn't that important to me, to be honest. It's sending the message that no, we are not going to accept the abuse and misuse of the environment. And if it's residents that are doing this, ticket them as much as we are ticketing others, in all honesty. If it's residents who on one side are continually complaining about the environment being misused, no, heck, double it up. It's ridiculous. So I'm personally of the mind that it needs to be enforcement. And if this means we do this for a year and we send that clear message, great. And if we review this next year or whatever the case is, we do that. But that's where I feel. Tim?
Yeah, I'll echo those comments 100%. And if a resident's going to complain that they got a littering ticket, shame on them, and I'd double it. We see it, we saw it this last year, we've seen it the last probably 3 or 4 years of residents complaining of tourists. I know there's residents that do the exact same thing. So if it means we get complaints, I'll take them from residents if we need to enforce to set the stage and get back on track. I'm all for enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Teach?
Just to kind of answer, I think, some of your questions, the first part being the feedback, I think everyone's aware, like, I say whatever I feel like saying and I get lots of feedback and it doesn't bother me. We're gonna get feedback no matter what we do. For me, this is a slam dunk for council. This was so prevalent in the election of what people want us to do. This is an opportunity for us to say, we've listened to the people, we're going to act on this. And I'm with Councillor Payne too, in the fact that like I would lean towards going with the provincial ticket, taking that 70% if we can. But for me, this is a public perception issue of like, we are listening to the people. You don't get to come down here anymore, resident or non-resident, and treat our beach like it's not valuable. You know, we have one of the most valuable places to be in this province, and that's why we get 1 million people that come here every year, bless you. And so we have to start treating it with that value. And my biggest issue has been, if we don't enforce, if we don't value it, if we don't follow and make people respect our beach, then we're showing that they don't have to. So for me, it's like enforcement, deal with the feedback, have public perception. Like, if you give a littering ticket and some idiot judge says what he said to you and throws it out, well, all the people around that person who are getting that ticket are watching that happen. And then they go, whoa, wait a second. Okay, or maybe I shouldn't do that. They don't know that they're going to go to a court and get some judge that had a bad day and decides to say something silly. They know they're going to get ticketed and they're going to have to go to court. And that in of itself is a little bit annoying, or they don't go to court and they just pay it. So for me, it's like it's a perception issue. Let's enforce it. I'm done with warnings. Like I said, I'm so done with warnings and education and the best education. You know, like I'm not giving my daughter warnings when she screws up. It's like, okay, this is our consequences of our actions. That's where we should be with our beach as well. So the biggest thing for me is just like having that perception out there that, hey, we're not doing this anymore. We're not playing this game anymore. We're treating our beach with respect. So I'm all for that, and I'm for the enforcement and just not playing that game anymore.
Megan?
I like this direction. Enforce, enforce, enforce. I do think we've done education for so many years. I'd love to see the stats posted on our website about what those ticketing cycles look like. And I just wanted to add the note that for me, when we talk Lakeshore, that includes both sides of the street. And I would love to see more smoking tickets go out for smoking on the business side of Lakeshore Drive. Council who's been here for a while, I've heard my rant on this, but I'll give it to you again anyways. I feel uncomfortable walking down that side of the street with my children because I'm walking through a smoke cloud and a few people swearing, and it's not a great place to walk with a 4- and 6-year-old, and I don't think there should be any part of our town that feels like that. So on top of the Lakeshore side, I would really love to see some targeted enforcement when it comes to the other side of the street. I know there's challenges with that because there isn't really a great place to smoke, and do you want to push smokers to the back alley? My answer is yes, because I don't walk down the back alley, I walk on the sidewalk, and I really want this to be a summer where we see really dramatic change on how that streetscape feels.
Holly?
Just to add on to what you just said, one of the things that came up in my campaign also was we need to clean up our act on the street, the business side of Lakeshore, because I walk early in the mornings and I walk through butts and filth, and I just think if you have the privilege of owning a business on that strip, you need to do your due diligence to clean up every morning after your patrons or the people that just have walked by. Pick up garbage and sweep up the butts, and let's keep it clean. And I don't know how we do this, and I don't know if we've done anything in the past, but we really need to lean on the businesses to do this more, to take pride in their storefronts on that front for tourists and for the residents that live here. I don't know how we do that, but I would like to put an emphasis somewhere.
Joe?
I'll just begin my comment, I suppose, with pointing out what I think is a faulty assumption underlying basically everything I'm hearing, is that something that Councillor Johannesson said, the judge is not an idiot. By holding us to account on improving proving something, right? It's our job to prove, and our bylaw officer's job to prove that an infraction occurred, right? But this is what I'm getting at, is that we're making changes now to the garbage collection, the bathroom cleanup. If we start enforcing, what are we gonna know, like, and we see a cleaner beach, is it because bylaw is enforcing more? Is it because we are doing a better job of holding ourselves to account on how the government operates and how it functions? Like, I'm worried that we're assuming people aren't respecting the beach, right? That's what I've heard several times. When, yeah, of course that's gonna happen. But I think a lot of it is inadvertent. A lot of it is just the nature of having 10,000 people piled into one single area. And the outcome that we want is a cleaner beach, a safer beach, and what have you. What if we're gonna get there anyway? By doing a better job with garbage cleanup, by doing a better job with beach cleanup, by doing a better job with washroom cleanup, although that's less of a bylaw issue, but whatever. And in doing so, all we've done is just dump more money at the problem and, frankly, anger the people that are coming to visit here and our residents. And then I'm just gonna go off on a separate tangent now. Something I saw a lot online, and I hate to say it because I don't know if these are all necessarily residents, God only knows, but I'm worried that there's gonna be a perception, if bylaw starts going out there and handing out a bunch of tickets, let's say we pass a no tent bylaw, I'm just hypothetical, starts getting all the families out there that come up with tents. What I heard a lot of times is, frankly, people kind of pointing towards a certain subset of the community that may have a different melanin count than I have. And now suddenly our bylaw are the enforcers of anti, Somalians or whatever the heck it is.
No, teach.
I'm not saying that is what the actual fact is going to be. I am worried that that's what the perception is going to be from people online. That's what enforcement does, right? Or can do. Do we need to enforce more? Maybe, yeah. I hear a lot. I haven't lived here long enough to know, but I'm concerned that if that's what we fixate on, that's a path that we might end up going on unnecessarily. And maybe it's residents, like Mr. Lipsack pointed out, that are upset because they got a ticket. Well, I think it was Councillor Payne that mentioned it, but if they did it, they deserve the ticket, frankly. But in any case, that's my 2 cents in my rant. So,
Good rant. Yeah, I'd like to go, please. Not to debate. I'm not going to debate. It's fine. It is what it is.
First of all, I stand by my comment. I think the judge was an idiot. I take offense, actually, to those comments. I guess I'm not going to debate them, but I take offense to that because I'm not a person who commits a infraction of our bylaws is a person who commits an infraction of our bylaws, regardless of if they're white, brown, black, or whatever. If it happens to be people that are all committing those infractions, if they happen to be a melanin, then that has nothing to do with that and everything to do with the fact that they committed an infraction. I'm not interested in making people who come here feel good if they get ticketed. I don't care if they get mad if they get ticketed. I don't care if they don't come back after they get ticketed. We have played this game before. I'm not interested in whose feelings we're going to hurt because we enforce our bylaws. We have to enforce our bylaws. This is like, and I'm going to share this clip on my social media. This is wild that this is up for discussion. This was a slam dunk for us as a council to actually show up and do something. To bring up race in this is, quite frankly, despicable. And I can't sit here as someone on council who, we're not, like, it's such a cop-out and a scapegoat.
I think, Teach, I'm gonna stop you there.
Of course you are.
I'm gonna stop you there
because
because it's
we
not-
want to play these silly games
not-
of race baiting.
Teach, it's not the
Infractions are
conversation we're having.
infractions. Tell me what rule I've broken, Jazz. Infractions are infractions regardless of the color of your skin. That has nothing to do.
But that's not the debate we're having.
But that's the debate I'm having because I'm offended by that. Because I want more enforcement, and this person
We'll
over
take a
here is
recess,
telling
thank
me that I am a racist
order,
because
please.
we're going to have ridiculous.
couple of people had questions about things, so Councillor Ustindi?
Yeah, just some reflections and question two is, we should never forget, I always think about this in times of trouble, most people are good people. And someone quoted the 10,000 people, when you throw 10,000 people together, of course we can expect some friction or messes that we have to deal with. So, but most people are good people. I was talking to one of the bylaw enforcements recently in one of our orientations up in Blackfalds. I believe it was the Blackfalds department that has switched to all provincial ticketing. They figured, yes, we lose some revenue, but the enforcement of a provincial ticket was worthwhile to them. They were looking at their stats, and our department would know those stats and can share in the future. But I lean to that kind of thinking that might be a good step, just to go to provincial ticket, no more municipal tags. I lean towards the idea of increasing the enforcement at the beach and funding that, and maybe some tickets will help pay for it. However, just like we talked about, we're talking about the tourist and the resident can be expected to be enforced upon if they break our bylaws. I also want us to remember that let's not only, in our debate about parks and tourism and that, not only focus on the lakefront, because there are residents who dump things in our green spaces behind my house. So when I'm behind my house, I see things dumped by our residents into the park, because we sort of think, oh, well, it's just a wheelbarrow of dirt. Oh, it's just some more grass clippings. It's just a plastic hanger, the flower baskets I bought. All that is behind my house in our green spaces. And some people think, oh, those trees, that's just a place to dump. No, it's actually a natural space, and that's one reason I love living where I live. And I don't want to see flower baskets dumped behind my house. And so we have a need to enforce beauty, aesthetics, cleanliness, good behavior everywhere in town. And so I don't want us to lose sight of that. So hiring more enforcement can maybe assist us all over our town. But I know we have a perception and an actual, I believe, problem in our lakefront as well. Those are some of my thoughts. The question I had, would it be realistic to, with an additional 2 enforcement officers, to be able to have more present in certain areas around town? So just the question, could there be more presence around town too from having an extra 2?
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. We can provide some, again, direction in terms of our priorities to enforcement. And I'm going to suggest that we were probably, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, we were down at least 1 officer throughout all of last year due to hiring and putting 1 officer through training. And as of July 27th, we will be at a full complement of officers again. So that will certainly help us as well. Yeah.
Cool. Joe?
So just circling back to the issue of enforcement and the staffing levels. So in the question in support of further enforcement, so moving away from an education first model, like that's a spectrum obviously from strict enforcement to education, moving further along that spectrum towards further enforcement, is the request for 2 additional staff necessary to complete that goal, or is that a request because we want to basically be able to enforce more while educating the same amount?
Through the chair, I'm going to suggest that the request for 2 additional seasonal bylaw officers is going to have more to do with the visitor paid parking program than whether we go with more of an enforcement versus an educational model. So yeah, just hopefully I'm answering your question before you can answer it, is we have a couple of options here within the visitor paid parking discussion to expand the program. And if we expand the program, certainly in terms of area, but also in terms of the season, it just makes it that much harder for our officers to actually cover that area. And what we're seeing now is, not to point anything specific out, but I would just say back alley parking probably isn't getting covered as much as it could. So we would just need a couple more officers, seasonal bylaw officers in the summertime to make sure we do a better job of covering all our areas within the paid parking program.
Just spill over on that then. So if I'm hearing you correctly, then the stricter enforcement, setting aside if we expand parking, could be completed by the existing staffing levels. We just would have to change their priority.
That's correct. I would say, I thought I did it. Yeah, I would say that's correct. So the way we would look at it, or the way I certainly am looking at it right now, is our seasonal bylaw officers are responsible for probably 85 to 90% of our visitor paid parking program, doing parking tickets, parking enforcement. And again, there's a little bit, I think I put the stats in here, I believe, into this report. Oh no, that wasn't, sorry, something else we were just doing, a year-end review. We do much, much more enforcement in visitor paid parking than we do education. We gave out, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10% was in warnings as opposed to tickets. So I would say that's our one anomaly, is visitor paid parking is enforcement with very little warnings. And that's where we would need the additional seasonal paid parking, is to not change the focus of enforcement versus education, but actually get to all the areas and do a good job of coverage on our visitor paid parking program. The full-time staff, we have 5 full-time peace officers, 2 full-time bylaw officers. They would be able to cover, or I guess coverage for the remainder of the town, although they also help out in the downtown. So to answer your question, existing staff would be able to do the enforcement on the rest of the town, yes.
I think that's it. Let's move on.
All right, I'll move through this one quickly. So this was just more of a reminder, additional repairs and upgrades in the lakefront this year. So we currently, our access ramp at 41st Street walkway, it actually is from Centennial Park right into the sand area. I would say it's 80% done. The ramp, I believe, is also built off-site and sitting there waiting, and they're just going to install it at a later date. But it's there, and it takes direct, we'll call it wheelchair handicap access from above the retaining wall down to the sand area. So that's the main one that we're putting in. We'll get it finished off this year. And then I added the additional swim zone behind the bay to the west of the pier, just so that everybody's a reminder of that one. The big challenge there for staff will be working with the boat rental company to make sure that we're not, taking their business away from them now that there's hardly any water left there. So we'll work that out with them in the springtime, but that one will also go in this year, and we have Transport Canada's approval on that already. So bylaws. So moving on to tents. I wrote here what are currently what our bylaw states is tenting is prohibited within the area designated in the map, including as Schedule B to the bylaw. So that means everything from the paved walking trail, paved pathway north to the waterfront is prohibited from having tents there. And again, our definition of tenting is erection, setup, or use of temporary structures typically made of fabric or similar materials used for shelter or shade, including but not limited to tents of any dimension and sunshades of a dimension greater than 1 meter squared. So that's what's prohibited in that area. And again, we have lots of, I'll call it trouble, for lack of a better word, enforcing some of those things. And again, I think it comes down to, from our perspective, it comes down to the lack of clarity. So someone will come in, they'll have a 10 by 10, four-sided shelter that they plop up there with no walls on it. And there keeps, that's not a tent, it's just an umbrella. And they're like, well, no, it's not, it's got four. But anyway, you can see the hesitancy we have. We have ones that'll come in there with a sunshade, but it's a large sunshade, or mostly that one. Sometimes some smaller tents, but they're all mesh as opposed to, you know, yeah, something that you can't see through. So we get all sorts of conversations, we'll put them, with people over those types of structures. And I think what we're requesting from council is just some clarity over that. Whether we continue on with the status quo, whether we change the definition to what we're recommending would be a single pole umbrella, or whether we abolish everything altogether, which from a enforcement standpoint, but also probably just from a community standpoint, I'm not sure we wanted to take everything away, because then we're going to have the concerns about some shade for small kids. So our recommendation is single pole umbrella only, and that's kind of where I'll open up the conversation.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Question on existing bylaw and the changes to upland rights, I forget our official term for it, now that we have rights over the beach from the province. Yep. Does that automatically, or would we have to designate that in the map that we are no longer to the seawall, the edge of town, but our potential tent zone or non-zone is right to the water's edge? Because up till now, we've only had rights to the seawall, the edge of town. And now we have some ability to extend rights of our town.
So through the chair, we would, I'm not sure what the legal standpoint would be, but we would definitely identify that through our bylaw. That it includes, we'll word it somehow that it includes everything, included our leased area, because we do have that ability through our lease. Okay. So it will be very clearly defined through our bylaw.
Tim?
Yeah, I'd be happy to support administration's recommendation. You know, we tried this, I don't know, this is year 4 maybe. Mm-hmm. And every year we've had to bring it back a level, and I, just with the confusion we're hearing about single pole shade, that's what a lot of us grew up with. So I would be happy to have that single pole umbrella, not anything outside of that.
Oh, sorry.
I support the single pole umbrella. I am interested in exploring an exemption to that for Centennial Park only, because I think that that is an appropriate place that you could have a birthday party tent or something else. That was meant for that sort of space. So I don't mind excluding that. Potentially Lakeshore Park as well, because it's such a big grass area, but really Centennial Park is where I'd be interested in an exemption for that. I'm assuming we'd also put something in that if you had an approved event permit, that would be okay. And just your comment about the lease area, I'm curious if that applies in the winter as well. And if that's something we need to consider, because would our lease area not essentially go to the end of the pier? And folks do have ice fishing shacks right on the edge of the skating surface at times. And certainly I have no problems with tents in the wintertime.
Through the chair, yes. Oops, I just lost. Yes, it does include the winter time. So we have that as seasonal all year long. It extends, I'm going to say roughly 60 feet past the end of the pier is roughly our area. So if I was to go out there today and look, yeah, there's some fishing shacks that are within our DML zone. And again, that would be some direction that we would have to decide at council how we want to approach that, whether they are, if anything was encroaching on or impeding on the skating rinks, we would certainly move that. But up until this time, we haven't taken that upon ourselves.
Yeah.
Having a young kid, I regret not having the ability to have like a little pop-up tent or something for them because it is so convenient, but I recognize the problem. And the problem is what Mr. Lebsack pointed out. And it's the same problem with littering, frankly, is that the way the bylaw is worded now, it's impossible to enforce consistently. And if it can't be enforced consistently, it's meaningless. And having a single peg umbrella, I mean, that's unambiguous. Everybody knows what that is. And, you know, I also think that there's been enough problems with tenting, enough of the community is frankly done with it, that I think we need to just get rid of it entirely. Keep it with the single pole umbrella. I do think there needs to be a very clear demarcation of where that is. I think Centennial Park's a great idea. I would hate to have a whole family, sorry, this is me being a bleeding heart, but I would hate to have like a family of 10 come out for people from Edmonton and Red Deer and they want to set up in there for their kid's birthday party and suddenly someone comes by and says no. Like that seems to be a really natural area to do something like that. Whereas on the beach, I mean, come on, you're just being a nuisance at that point, especially given the water level in town fluctuates so much. We can lose a lot of beach. So I'd be in favor of how it's presented and would have no problems passing a bylaw change to that effect and enforcing it rather strictly.
Any other thoughts? Tim, or sorry, Ian?
Tents really don't bug me much. You know, there's no moral right or wrong about them. You know, it's about, but there are legitimate concerns about them. In my original entry in this debate some 3 years ago, my concerns are we don't want people securing things to trees. We don't want them spiking the ground, damaging the turf. We don't want people to use walled tents where you're blocking views especially. And so those are things that do concern me, but you know, just the sight of a tent just doesn't get me excited. But I thought at that time we were probably going to push them back a lot more than we did. And I was kind of surprised and I thought, yeah, no problem, let's go for it. And the idea of allowing tents in the Centennial Park area, that what we would identify as the open field, is I think an ideal place for tents and for those who feel offended by them, I think can find compromise hopefully in that. And you know, sometimes people feel the tents are stealing the real estate, kind of taking over the place, in the sense of someone's grabbing a lot of space. You know, people do that with towels as well. You know, you have a family of 10 and you got 10 towels, you've taken up 10 people's space of real estate. And you know, the tent just gives a perception that it's sometimes more than it is. But I do think there's compromise, and I do think it is reasonable enough to say the Centennial Park is a good place. It's level ground. I still have concerns with, I don't want to see people spike in the ground with, you know, I've got a bunch of 12-inch spikes at home that I use sometimes when I'm camping. I don't want to, that can't be in the public park, not in a high-use urban park. That's a different thing when I go out in the bush. So that should be addressed in the bylaw too, that we're not tying down things, whether it's a one pole structure in the other areas or a tent in the open field. And I don't think we have any underground sprinkler systems, so we don't have to worry about hitting them. But still, we're trying not to damage the turf any more than we already are. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I just want to say that I 100% support administration's recommendation. This was one of my platforms in my campaign, only because this is what numerous people that live in town have been asking for. So I support it. With the exception that we can have tents for families and parties and so on in Centennial Park for sure. Because that area, really, that's what it's made for.
Okay, good. Next.
All right, we'll throw this one in here. Barbecues as well. So again, a few years ago, we went to no charcoal barbecues or anything, what our fire department calls a lit fire. We just go with propane barbecues only. No solid fuel barbecues, just propane barbecues only. And we'll open this one up for council's discussion and direction. But municipal enforcement has no issue with that, or parks. We don't see any real flagrant violations of this. We do catch a few once in a while, but they're more than happy to, well, easy enough to deal with in terms of getting rid of them and apologizing for using the wrong fuels.
Ms. Phillips?
Also a recent conversation we had, just because again, this bylaw applies winter and summer with the fires in the park. We did recently have a conversation about our fire pit by the skating rink, that we are going to open that up more publicly in the winter months only and create some criteria around that. So we're just starting to work on that. Still more to come, but that's our goal, is to get there as well.
Yeah,
so we'd have to include that.
Sorry, just to add to that, that conversation. It's more of we would refer it more as a municipal fire pit. Yes. And it'll be not necessarily operated by park staff, but it'll be opened and closed daily by park staff. It won't be something that's just left open for anybody to have a fire at any point in time.
I'm okay with keeping barbecues as is. It hasn't really been a substantial problem. I think tents are something that we're talking about more. I'll just express again, I have no desire for either of these to extend past the water's edge. I think you should be able to have a barbecue right on, I mean, if we went away with barbecues right on the lake shore, right against the skating rink, I also think there's no problem with popping up your tent. So I just would like to set that boundary across the board. My only request is I'd love to see better signage on the disposal bins. I will note that they are more often than not filled half with garbage and half with propane cylinders. And I think there's got to be a way to attach it to a garbage can and say propane cylinders only, garbage only, so that it's not just an open mesh mess of trash, because it's just not ideal.
Tim?
Yeah, I support the use of the propane barbecues the way it is, status quo, no change.
I'm fine with that as well. Okay. Visitor paid parking.
All right. Any questions? No. So administration is proposing 2 changes to the visitor paid parking program. Again, it's things that we've heard not only around the council table, but also out in the community. And so we can discuss them a little bit more in detail, but one of them is the parking rate increase. So we're currently at $30 a day in the lots and $3 per hour on the street. And we would recommend going to $40 per day and $5 per hour on the street. Again, just for clarification or for easy estimation there, we gave you a revenue projection. And the second one that we've heard is to extend the paid parking season to October 31st. And we've provided kind of, just in case you wanted to go to end of September instead of October, we've provided what would be there for September and for October. So we will leave it at those first 2 for now.
Thoughts? Tim?
It's kind of funny that we're at these rates. I remember when we brought paid parking in, and I was like, let's charge as much as we can. And, you know, we started off low, which I understand. But, you know, this is something that can offset some increased costs we're going to see during budget. Doesn't affect residents at all. I think this is a win for everyone. And so I'm happy to support the increase to $40 a day and $5 per hour. And I would like it to see it to go to October. We get some nice fall weather. We get lots of visitors. again, it doesn't affect residents and can help offset some budget items. So fully in favor of this.
Megan?
I support the rate increase. I support the season increase. At minimal, I'd like to see April 1st to October 31st, but I actually think year-round would be our best choice here. I know that brings in some enforcement challenges, but I want to say how many times I have been down there in November, in October, in April, and they're looking at their phone, confused at how do I pay right now? And I know that a number of those calls have gone up to our enforcement office. That people are looking to pay and we don't have a way to collect their money. So I think year-round would just be the simplest way. We do some great things in the winter, that there's some overfull parking. But regardless, I think we should also start earlier. I also just want to add one note that isn't included on here, and I'm really interested in adding in the library lot. I'll say I've had a conversation with the library about it, and they are actually extremely supportive of it, which was interesting because I thought, no way. They would love some order, some enforcement in that parking lot. They believe that would come with it. As long as they could reserve their couple of staff spots that are already flagged, they would like to see this go forward in their lot. Council, you have heard me speak about it before, but I also look at other lots in town. I'm fine if you want to just look at library is one I'd really advocate for, but I also think the west next door slot, and I think once Pagattle Park construction is done this next year, the following year, Pagattle Park, the spray park, that area, once it's paved, should also be included. It is free for our residents, so there is no hardship on us to expand this town-wide in many other areas, and I'd like to see us continue just increasing annually, doing it in a reasonable way. I don't think we're ready for Pagattle yet, but I do think we're ready for the library.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second what Mayor Hansen said. I think that parking lot being unpaid, I think is actually frankly kind of confusing to a lot of people because it seems like it should be. It's surrounded by paid parking, it's central. So if the library's got buy-in for it, and I don't want to speak for them, then I think that lot should be paid. And I'll be blunt too. I think $40 a day is low. I think it could be higher. I think it could be at least 50. People are spending the full day here, generally speaking, and that's not an outrageous amount of money to pay to park your car for a day. I mean, I pay $40 in downtown Calgary easy. So, and I'd be a fan of expanding it year round, or at minimum the proposed length of time. If we did do year round, I think it probably makes sense to have a different rate depending on the season, right? A lower rate in the winter, because I think people would bulk at $50, you know, in a February. But yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Teach.
Yeah, I think $40 a day and $5 an hour is just way too cheap. I think again, it comes back to my point of putting value on our beach and how amazing that it actually is. I'm not here to do favors for people that don't pay taxes here or don't live here. I think that when you go to the Calgary Zoo, a family of 4 is $116. If you go to the movies, family of 4, it's $60. If you go basically anywhere, it's more than $50. And so we need to value our beach. I think 50 is a good number to start this year, and then I think we can look to make that up. I think $10 an hour, $8 an hour on the street is also appropriate. When we went to Calgary for Alberta Munis, it was like $80 a night at a hotel we were already paying for. So I think the people coming from places like Calgary and Edmonton, like they come here and that's going to be no different to what they pay on a daily basis just to go to work. Like my cousin works at the library in Calgary and she pays to go to work, to park at work as well. So I don't think it's going to be a shock to people. I think we should up it to $50 a day, maybe $8 an hour. I had 10 on my sheet, but then you have 5 there, so maybe I meet you in the middle. But in the pushback that I get from people when I've been mentioning this is a big part of my campaign was, well, then people won't come. Good. If you don't want to come and pay money to come to our beach and value it, then don't come. Like that you clearly don't think it's worth $50 a day, so don't come. That can free up some space for the seniors to come down and use the benches and read books like I heard from them at their when we went and met with them. And the people that aren't willing to pay $50 a day, are probably the same people that aren't respecting our beach and are using the water as a bathroom and littering on our beach. So the other thing too, an idea, something that maybe Ms. Phillips we could talk about. I know I've mentioned to you this before, to kind of help our local businesses and raise more money, and also offset the $50 a day for people. And of course, this would take some admin work, but I think it's worth it, and I think it's something worth looking into. Just an idea I had of like, if we charge $50 a day, but on your daily rate of $50, you got, let's say, a coupon for restaurants that wanted to participate, $10 off a $30 order, with your $50 a day parking pass. So that gives you your parking, but it also gives you, and we could work with restaurants on this, you know, $10 off a $30 order, which gets people into the restaurants because they want to use their money. So just an idea, I know I'd mentioned to you before, Ms. Phillips and to Mayor Hansen, of something that maybe we could look at doing. I would think when I think about this, I would think that we could offer the restaurants like, hey, you know, whatever it might be, like I said, you don't want to just give people $10 free, but like, you know, saying $10 off a $30 order, and then the restaurants can basically send us, you know, each month, this is, you know, reimburse us for these $10. We're still gonna make $40 an hour on those people that actually use it, but a lot of people also won't use it, and it also, you know, gets people into our businesses. So just an idea that I had a while ago with that, but yeah. $50 a day, $8 to $10 an hour. I think we want to up that, and I think that, and I'm all for the year round, and you know, adjusting it in the winter time. We have it anyways. I think with enforcement being an issue, I mean, if people don't pay in the winter, whatever, at least we're still getting some revenue. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Ms. Phillips?
Thank you for and I do recall you bringing up that suggestion, Councillor Johannesson. What I would recommend with that one, because it would require a business case to determine how the overall cost of it, is to maybe request to put it as a notice of motion, so that there's direction from all of council that we do want to spend the hours in to do the study to bring it back. So if I can suggest that, and if you need assistance with that, is it Callie or Jolene? Jolene, Ms. Reynolds can assist you with putting that together. Thank you.
I'll take a shot to weigh in here. I remember, as Tim does, when we first started this, and it was like, you know, charge whatever you want, like fill your boots. I do think that $50 a day is not extreme, but I also think that one of the groups that I hear complain about this are the individuals that live adjacent to Sylvan, that use Sylvan's facilities, that are part of a community that are partnered with us. I don't agree with the next door center parking lot as being a part of this at all, because I do think that there's a user agreement for the next door center with some of our communities, and those communities will end up paying in addition, and I don't agree with that. I do think the library parking lot absolutely should be, and I've thought that since the very beginning, that it should be. And I you know, whether we do it incrementally, $40 this year, $50 next year. One other thing that did come to mind for me, and I know that some areas have different rates per day depending on what time of year it is. We may want to consider a difference in rate in the winter, because I do think that there is a lot of folks that come to Sylvan for things in the winter these days. It's a lot more than it used to be, but I don't know if paying $50 a day to park in February has the same appeal. So that's something we might want to think about. But as for the rate increase, as for the season increase, I think the season increase is appropriate. To be honest, I'm leaning with Councillor Mearns and the mayor in thinking that, you know, we should start thinking about this all year long, but maybe with a provision on rates in different times of the year. Because I too have been in situations where I've been parking at a parking lot in late September, early October, and had somebody ask me, where do you pay for parking? So, so I know that's a situation that is an expectation. The expectation is that you will have to pay. So, with all that, yeah, butt away.
It's almost 7. Would you like to make a motion, even though we don't really do motions in committee of the whole, but
In
to go
committee of the
past
whole, we
7?
don't usually do motions.
Yeah,
Well, we can always just go home.
that is up to council, yes.
Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion that we extend an additional hour past 7 p.m.
All in favor? Nobody is opposed. Spineless. Like I said. Councillor Stindy.
Yeah, I generally support the idea of increasing fee. I'm not married to a certain number, though. I also support expanding the time greatly. I do question in my mind a bit about encouraging the winter visitor. I know that's an interest in our business community. And how will that factor in? Is that a selling point to when the pressure is less? I understand from our notes here that we can change the rates for different areas. I think the premium price should be right on the waterfront. When I think about the library parking lot, or eventually when we're at Pagatl discussing that rate, having different rates. Because location is key to pricing typically. Yeah. So.
Megan?
That's a great idea. I also think it's a really great suggestion to do year round with a, it can be $2 an hour back to the early parking rates and $15 a day, but that winter rate, I think that's a great idea. And it also just helps with that consistency if you still go and do it year round, even if the rate is $1 or whatever that is. I did want to just note that we do have the annual pass still for those neighbors. And although I would like us to increase that. Right now it's $126.50 annually. Our costs have gone up on Lakeshore, so I think we can justify that makes sense, but probably not substantially. Like, I'm okay with $150 for that annual pass. If you live in the summer villages and you want to purchase that, I can justify that when you come to complain, to say, why am I paying for this annual parking pass? And it is unlimited parking for your whole year to do all your stuff, but Sylvan Lake residents are paying for the maintenance of that area every single day. If you're going to come enjoy our waterfront, there's also a cost to do that. So I like that being still lower, but we could probably increase from what it is. But we did come up with a bit of a methodology to that number, and the number is increased as we increase staffing and other things. I'd like us to still use that defendable number, whatever that turns out to be.
Is there a desire to discuss next door center parking lots? Because I know you had mentioned it kind of quietly, kind of slid that in there. What's other people's feelings on the next door center parking lots? Yeah.
I'll say generally no. It's already a facility you pay to go into. Mm-hmm. You know, even in the senior center, when people come to the senior center, they're paying for the programs. Mm-hmm.
Tim?
Yeah, I would, my focus would be north of the tracks.
Okay.
Parking lots there, yeah.
Holly?
I would say north of the tracks.
Okay.
My concern is you take away that space for the facility users and you put more pressure on the residents that live around those facilities. Mm-hmm.
Joe?
Yeah, I think that train line has a nice clean break.
Cool.
It helps make it conceptualize it for everybody, so I like keeping it out of there.
Tej?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. Okay. We know how you feel.
Can I? I'll just say, it was really that west parking lot that's of interest to me, because generally don't see that being users of the facility in the summertime, when the closer lots are still half empty or are not full, and the one even directly across the street, but then the one on the west is full. That tells me it's probably not facility users. But I also actually think it's, although I'm really interested in that, I'm also interested in many other lots around town. I think that's a conversation you have all at once when you're ready to make that move. And the year that a part of Pagattle is included is the year we have that conversation, and maybe the year we have a shuttle service and you pay for your parking in the lot and that gets you on the shuttle, or any of those other things. I think you talk about it all together down there, because right now it is a very clean cutoff. I just will keep mentioning it so that one day we'll talk about it.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lebsack, are you good with visitor pay parking?
I am, except I was just going to clarify one point in the next two slides, is that still 50th Avenue from 40th Street to 50th Street is not, the on-street parking is not included. So if we're going to the parking lot adjacent to the library, are we including the on-street parking along 50th as well? Those are the next two slides in here, is those two zones are currently not in.
Would we have a concern about limiting parking? Because there's the Lighthouse Church, is that what it's called, right there? St. George?
Yeah, St. George.
Yeah.
St. George Church, yeah.
Oh, that's already on, okay, never mind.
But I think they've closed, haven't they? Are they still? Yeah. No, Frontline's now on the other side of town. Church is still there. I personally think that we should still have that zone being the way it is. Like, I don't want to change that.
Sorry, keep 50th Street and those two zones remain as free? That's the way it currently is.
In the summer, I noticed that is high season area for all the people that go to the beach. So I'm surprised by that, actually. I just drove, now everybody has a different perception. That's why we're here to discuss. I drove it the other day and I'm like, I didn't realize this was free. I kind of thought it was part of the paid parking, so. But I do understand the challenge with the medical clinic and the church. There could be some exceptions. I know, I'm just gonna give an example, the parking lot where the Steam and Spa is, they've now come to their own private parking. But when I go use the Steam and Spa, I go in, I put my license plate in, I don't have to pay. So I don't know if there is any ways around a model like for the medical clinic so that we could capture revenue for the town for parking, and then also have something so that if I'm going into the clinic and I go into the doctor's office that I can get that waived or something. I don't know. That might be too hard to put together.
If I heard correctly, the Frontline Church was the one I was thinking of, the one next to the Legion and everything like that. So do they not have services anymore?
They moved to the
They moved. Okay, anyway. Okay, so if that's not a concern, then everything that I was worried about, I empathize with the medical clinic, but I mean, frankly, that same argument can be.
There is still a church in the place that you're thinking. It is not Frontline, but it's St. George's Church.
Son of a.
They've just, the name, yeah.
Okay. Well then, okay. Forget I said anything.
I thought we would, as a group, probably go for this expansion. One thing, by creating free parking, you end up attracting more people for the beach, which means you're actually displacing people for the business. The other thought I had is most people that come to the medical clinic are most likely people that live in this zone. They're regular patients of those doctors or going for their physio, and they are residents of this area. And so they would not need to pay for parking. So that's how I was looking at this area, thinking, wow, now you're just, you know, we're deferring the visitor parking revenue that would come there, and now we're going to attract even more visitors to that block because everything else is paid. So I lean to including it for those thoughts that I have.
I think I feel differently because of the Legion and the library. You know, I don't want to see users of the Legion have to pay for parking outside the Legion. And I don't want to see users of the library have to pay for street parking outside the library. Because again, we have partners that are already have user agreements with the library. And I just think we don't have anybody. Still the Legion. And the medical center, medical clinic.
Yeah, I would lean towards those same comments as Councillor Payne, just to think about the medical clinic, the Legion. You know, we'd have to figure out some exceptions for, there's 2 churches in there, in that spread. So it's like, you know, kind of like your idea, Councillor Bilodeau, but I think it'd be an administrative nightmare. And then if something goes wrong, then do they come to the town? Where do they go? So, I don't know, I would like to see it left as is for now anyways.
Could we just capture the south side of Railway Ave from the end of the old bowling alley past the campground? That is the longest stretch there, not the side where the church is. Could we just capture that one extra street, which is one sign for paid parking? And then if somebody parks on the other side of the street and they see the sign on the opposite side and they want to pay, they can pay.
Through the chair, if council so wishes, yes, that's something that we could do from setting up the program. That's certainly possible. It's just signage and then some more communications out. Yeah.
I'm okay. I think that's a great idea. I'm also okay to leave it free for this year, only because what I'm imagining is that one change could hold back the entire program rollout, because we have some very local businesses there. But it really does also give a question for me. Why do we treat that street differently than, you know, we have a chiropractor office, we have a dental clinic, we have an eye office, all of which have to follow that paid parking program. Why do we treat one area differently than the other? I'm okay not to tackle it this year, but I do think, I mean, logically and for ease of communication, it just makes sense to include it. And we probably maybe should start to give notice that, you know, on this year that will be happening. Here's how we can work towards it. But I wouldn't be in favor of rushing this through, knowing what those business objections will be, trying to do that before April 1st this year or whatever date we're hoping to make these changes. So, but maybe long-term, if that's a direction we want to go, let's set a time frame and start to have those conversations so that they know plenty in advance.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then I just think in the last 3-4 years of construction that's gone in those areas, let's give it a little bit of a break, but I would be fine with saying, you know, 2027, expect that this area is going to be pay parking or something like that, and do the whole thing at once. I'd be fine with that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we've touched on communication already. Like I said, residential, we know that there's 2 different streams that we need to do, one for residents, one for external visitors. Once we get some of these things put together, we'll present a communications plan. I will not set up the communications plan, but I know somebody who will, and council will be aware of it at that point in time. And I think if...
Yes.
I really appreciate the way this is laid out. There are 3 really important things in those resident communications for me. It needs to say what we heard, what we're doing, and how we're paying for it. And if those points are covered in that communication, I think that will go a long way, even if it's, you know, we're reassessing some of these things next year. But those 3 categories, please consider them. Thank you.
Oh yes, I forgot, I did have some more. Just an update for golf cart bylaw. So everything's been submitted to them. They have asked for additional information, which we've submitted to them already. We got that in just before Christmas. They expected to have an answer to us by January 15th, but just to be aware, we have not heard anything back from them yet. So we have submitted all the required information that they were looking for. They're just still evaluating it. I can tell you through some conversations on the phone with them that they were never expecting a community our size to put in a submission like this. They weren't sure how to handle it when they got it. And so that's why it's taking a lot longer for us, considering that we have the population we have roads at the speeds that we have. We actually have Highway 20 through, which was a very good thing that we blocked that off completely. Otherwise, it would have been a definite no-go. So they're just having a little bit more concerns with our community than they have with others. But I expect to hear back on it fairly soon.
Just ask, can we follow up and communicate that to the business that initiated this process?
Sure.
If you know, I know that they're just waiting, and even if the answer is, hey, just letting you know, we thought we'd hear by this date, we haven't heard yet, we're going to follow up this week. But just let them know that it's in the province's hand, and yeah, as often as we can communicate that when it changes, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I can certainly do that through the chair. Just to be clear again, there is no commercial use allowed, and that was one of the comments that was brought back to me from the permitting program that's looking at this. So I will communicate that as well, that there is no commercial use allowed. This is for personal use only. So just to be totally clear with council.
And then with that, we'll still be able to bring it back to council to make a motion to request to the province for a...
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
We can
Sorry,
take the next step.
It's getting late.
Yeah, we can take the next step after it's been approved.
Just so you know, there is another
Yeah.
step following.
This approval does not include commercial.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Additional summer operational items.
I believe this is open for discussion. We had asked to include these in the discussion tonight.
I believe that there should be again, a service level that at minimum, every neighborhood is checked by enforcement once per year for summer unsightly properties and winter sidewalks. I don't think that would be, I could drive all of Sylvan Lake in one day. If you're stopping to write tickets, it might take you a week, twice a year for those seasons. I would like to see us on those two topics, unsightly properties and sidewalk enforcement in the winter time, be more proactive and not only be complaint driven. I think complaints against your neighbors is really the worst way to build community, and one of our current strategic priorities is building community, and this is a really poor way to do it. It's not going to catch everything, but if we knew that was happening once per year, I'd love to see that in policy. And I'd also like us to do what we can to encourage Festival Street usage. And for me, I am very comfortable with waiving the parking fees for any event that is looking to take over that street year-round.
Is this just a generic discussion about these then, I suppose?
Yeah.
Since you mentioned the parking, just because I did put it forward about the Sylvan Lake Cruise night, looking at moving from the West Promenade parking by service to Festival Street on Fridays. So, but that would require a change to how we handle parking on that street, because they basically told me, I don't know if administration's talked to them since, but they're like, I don't think we could afford to pay $50 a day per stall to close that road, so.
Yeah.
We are bringing back the events policy in February. So that'll be a great opportunity to include that in there.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm fine with those suggestions. I don't think it would be any big task to do all those things. And then, yeah, definitely the use of Festival Street for sure. Yeah.
Hello. lot of passion for tonight's agenda. The farmers market specifically, I'd love to talk about incentivizing them for a new location. I do not believe that that dusty, muddy, often, like something happens Friday nights, it always rains because the farmers market is in town, which means it's a very puddly, muddy, not great location. I walked it with wagons and strollers of babies, and you could not get through that parking lot with either of those things with small wheels. I'd love to see them find a long-term location that is somewhere other than the dirt parking lot.
Do you have a suggestion for a long-term location of that size?
Well, if cruise night isn't going to be there, we designed Festival Street with the farmers market in mind. There is the correct power, and I know I don't believe they're incredibly interested in moving there, but I do wonder what incentivizing could look like. Other than that, I'm sure there's probably some other suitable locations. Maybe it's Bogattle Park once those are paved, although I do think there's something about being near Lakeshore. I think we should explore other options and come up with a plan to start to get towards there. The other challenge, if we don't start to act on this and come up with a plan, is that will not be a parking lot forever, that location. It is way too valuable of a property to be a dirt parking lot forever. It's just because we haven't found the right partners, funding, all of the things to develop that lot. If we don't have another suitable place for those type of long-standing events to go before then, it will be, uproar of the community that we have displaced the farmers market when development happens. And I think we should just be a step ahead of that process, that anything that takes place on that site is potentially really temporary. And let's find them a great long-term home.
Ian?
It might take a decade, but Four Seasons Park might one day in the future be an ideal farmers market location because it's being totally revisioned.
Yes, sir.
Through the chair, so we'll put some heads together to look at that, along with a couple other departments. I know there's one sitting right there that will be interested in it. The only thing we had talked about, brainstormed a little bit before this meeting, just as a heads up for council again, is construction on Centennial Street, if it happens which is planned for 2027, might be a hard time shutting down Festival Street, 50A, for events during, construction season, because then a detour is going to be going through residential areas and things. So that's just the only heads up, but certainly we'll look for like long-term locations and things like that within the downtown.
Excellent.
Rather than hold back moves like that, though, could we not entice organizations to use that street saying, hey, we'd love for you to use it for 2026. In 2027, there will be a pause for 1 year, but let's not just wait an additional 2 more years before we ever try that. And I think if you knew that up front with the right incentive, we could potentially still see some use on it before 2027. And it might give us a couple avenues or things that we need to consider as we make the improvements on 50th that we didn't factor in, or that make that street challenging for events that we need to consider, and gives us a year to make any minor edits we need.
Yeah, through the chair, like I said, we'll put the appropriate heads together in a room and we'll come up with some options.
Well, that is a lot to go through.
Don't forget my lovely diagram at the end.
I saw your lovely diagram, and I skipped to the next slide. You got everything you need? Good. Okay, Mr. Moore. Patiently waited for the excitement.
Mr. May. Can we just ask, what happens next? So we've gotten we've shared feedback. When do we expect to see some of this back, knowing that we'd like to implement at least a handful of these changes really soon?
We always have a meeting the day after a council or committee, the whole meeting, to debrief on how to move forward on these, knowing that these items, several of them impact this year and our budget process. You're going to hear about all of this coming up very quickly. Budget, any of the budget items, the staffing and whatnot will come forward with those meetings that are already scheduled. Any bylaws will have to be brought forward very soon. We're kind of ready for it, so you'll definitely see them in this first quarter to ensure they're ready for the thinking, am I over-promising by first quarter, Ron? First quarter, we'd have to see the bylaws to make sure that they're ready to be enforced by the summer. The general direction around enforcement, I think, is just the general direction we heard. And I think that it sounds like there's good support there, so that's an easy one. Service levels, we'll work on that as well to make sure it's brought back in time for implementation in the summer. So, yeah.
Now, Mr. Moore.
Good evening, Council. Hopefully we don't have to go past another hour. Yeah, so we can see the Bloom presentation brought up there. My intention really wasn't to go too much into that this evening, but we just wanted to have it handy in case Council wanted to discuss any items in there. That's kind of why we did the handout earlier this evening. So kind of some briefing notes that was put together after the Bloom presentation. So we'll certainly get to that here in a minute. I just wanted to focus on the report that was prepared really in your package. And we're just looking for, I'm just looking for the report. It's an awfully long agenda here. Yikes. Yeah. I have one. Thank you. It's just 211 pages. Wow. Oh, here we are. Okay. So, yeah. So of course, the 26 operating budget preparation is underway, and we're currently having meetings about that administratively. So tonight we wanted to just kind of get some direction from council on a few things that you've all seen. It's in the report. I won't go over the schedule. I hope council's well aware of that. I'm not sure if you've seen the department listing there before, but that's in the report tied to the nights that will be presenting and or deliberating. And the open house is planned to be the Nexus Center again. But we're looking for, I guess, some direction, some discussion from council on a range of any tax increase that you would like to see brought forward, starting on February 25th. And obviously some was discussed tonight with Mr. Lebsack about changes to service levels. So I think there's some direction given there. And if there's any specific operating projects that council would like included in the draft budget, to identify those. And then lastly, yeah, if there's any specific items, again, going back to the briefing notes from the Bloom presentation, which I thought was very good. I know there's a few things, but we didn't have too much of a follow-up discussion with council about the Bloom presentation. So, yeah, there's, I'm not sure if any of you had time to go over it this evening, but my apologies for the late addition. But yeah, so we're trying to be, we talked a bit about marketing at the Bloom presentation and doing a better job of that with our budget. And so we've had some discussions with comms about that. And they have been working on some things and have some ideas, benchmarking, that type of stuff. Some expectations that we took away from that presentation from council, and some action steps there. So some things that were identified were some of the key major budget drivers, such as inflation, MPI service level impacts, and to supply better notes and information for the public. And so visuals, benchmarks, and that type of thing. So again, Mr. Wallow and his team have been working on that. And then some messaging priorities there too, I think, that came out of the presentation, which I think we're going to try to use and capitalize on as far as value for money comparisons, taxes versus everyday expenses, and with some examples there, and then impact on inflation or of inflation and this MPI factor. So as our numbers get more finalized, we'll certainly put some effort into putting some of those information points together for the public and for council. So, yeah, and then so if there's any specific suggestions or ideas that council has, we'd be happy to hear them that aren't, you know, outlined or identified in this Bloom summary from council tonight. So.
Could you clarify an approximate amount, that a 1% tax increase, what that increases revenues by?
Yeah, good question. So last year we were about 2.25. I suspect this year will, you know, be a bit more. Of course, the assessment grows every year. We have a meeting with our assessor next week to go over our preliminary assessment data. So we'll probably be, you know, 240, 250 is a 1% tax increase. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll just open it up for some discussion with council and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ian?
I'll just throw in a comment about, you know, the ugly word tax rate increases. To me, the most important thing is service or service level that we debate as a community, because that then justifies what we're paying for. So having sat around the table, you know, 3 times, and this will be the 4th time now, you know, I have a sense of, you know, that process is how it will unfold. If we all come to a debate about the service being approximately the same, or things get tweaked up, some things get erased, really what our tax increase is inflation. However, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to raise your taxes by inflation, because we're going to, as stated by Mr. Moore, we're about to see what our assessed values are, because generally all things go up. The value of things go up, the cost of things go up, and that means you can use the same percentage tax rate. But at most, when we talk about if we're going to hold the line on our services generally, then really I, as a ratepayer at my own house getting my tax bill, I'll expect it not to be anything more than inflation. But I'm not giving permission to anybody to raise my taxes by inflation right now, because I want to see the service level debate. And so to be clear on that, I'm not advocating any percentage increase. I'm advocating that I recognize inflation is a major factor in our world. Often, all our construction costs have been often quoted around 6% inflation rates. I know those are ugly realities that enter our debate. But ultimately, it's what are we buying? What is our service levels? And so that's why I won't commit to a number. I'm just saying those are the factors that I have that we all will be wrestling with. Service, number 1.
Tim?
Yeah, similar lines to Councillor Stendy. We all know things go up, you know, as a homeowner, as a resident, groceries go up, everything goes up. When we look at the town operations, everything goes up exponentially. And so administration does an amazing job every year coming back to council saying, this is, you know, at our current service levels, this is what it's going to cost. But we just heard a great presentation by Mr. Lebsack. Well, that's a service increase that we just talked about tonight. So unless something else is going to drop off in our service levels, then where do we line up on an increase? So I'm not willing, you know, to commit on a range, but I understand that things go up, and I would be fooling myself if I'm not expecting some sort of increase based on the current inflation plus service levels we need. We're a growing community, and I think if we do a good job presenting that to the community and the marketing side of things and some of the things we heard at Bloom, that's easy to justify as a community member. So looking forward to what those service levels look like. You know, we heard last year that there was a majority that said they wanted to, you know, they would accept a tax increase for either the same or increased service levels. So that's what we heard a year ago. Whether or not we hear that this year or not, but yeah, I'm expecting some sort of increase based on inflation, but also what else are we bringing to the community that's a need, so.
Joe? I might be mixing up the two finance presentations I went to, because I also went to one at Alberta Munis. But one of the concepts that came up at one of the two was the idea that there's a different inflation rate for municipalities than there is for the average consumer. Without holding you to that number clearly, do we have some sense of kind of what that's looking like for the town? Because if we're talking a % increase range, I kind of would like to benchmark it with that.
Yeah, through the chair, good question. We haven't got to that stage yet, but certainly I think that's going to be part of the process and the package that we've discussed on the communication side is to identify that and make that part of the information for the public and for council.
When I started in this horseshoe 100 years ago, a 1% tax increase was about 160,000, somewhere in that ballpark. And now it's 250. So when I look at the service level staffing requirements that Ron pointed out today, you know, realistically, that's a 1% tax increase. You know, that's about that amount of money. So I think if we want to deliver what people are continually asking for, they want the service levels to be better. They want the demand levels to be better. I think if we want to deliver that, then we have to understand that it costs money. I think the town has done a really good job over the last 4 or 5 years in going through and trimming the fat. There really is none in our staffing. You know, in our departments, there's been a concerted effort to make sure that we are lean, that there isn't unnecessary staffing. So I think realistically going forward, I think there is the understanding that we will have an increase. If you look at what some of the increases have been provincially, they've been staggering. I don't predict that we will be in that situation, but I've seen increases provincially of 8, 9, 10, 11%, which is a horrifying thought. But I think a lot of municipalities are also not dealing with the fact that their assessment values have increased as well as we have. We've been beneficiaries of good assessment. So going forward, I'm much like the others. I don't have a number in mind of what I'm willing to tolerate, but I know from having done this 12 other times, there are expectations and there are things that I can live with and that I can't live with. And I don't see in any of the preliminary stuff that we've done so far, anything that I can't live with so far. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what is presented and what we can handle. Megan?
Also can't give a number, but I wanted to, I guess, express what makes me feel like we had a successful budgeting process, and then maybe just talk a little bit about that process. So it is laid out in the background, and you did a great job there. The first 2 nights are just presentations. So we hear different numbers that we'll expect to see. We have no real, I mean, you ask questions, but we don't debate it at all. And then on the budget deliberation day, how it has looked in the past and how I anticipate we'll probably see it is like a big spreadsheet that comes up on here, and we look line by line and go, yes, no, maybe. If it's a maybe, we highlight, we come back to it at the end. If it's a yes, you include it in, and it automatically like rejigs the numbers as we say yes or no to everything. And I feel successful when I have lots of choice in that. So I appreciate a budget with all of the wish list, and then that is a line by line item of, you know, are we hearing more that this service level is important, or that this tax decrease is important, and we go through that on each item. So it's not necessarily a number, but it's that I want to be able to defend every single line item on there. And I have always felt like that I can really justify because of the way that we do that process. So I'm looking for that again. I hope that I never have to, but I could defend a 10% budget if I knew that every line, this was the top thing I heard from every resident, and this was the only way we could make it happen. No different than I'd love to defend a 0% budget because we heard that that this was most important and that those service levels don't need an increase. Hard to pick a number, but do really like the way that we've gone through that process and just taking the time on the budget deliberations night. Sometimes that takes a long time. We used to book a whole Saturday for it. There's been less choice in some years because we have less budget to work with, but I would love to see just a big old long list for us to, and the other thing you've heard us talk about edge item lists, that's another portion that comes under there as well. And each of these items that we've throughout the year requested, hey, can we talk about that at budget time? If they're not deemed as administrative priorities, but we have requested them as council, they are all another list on there, and we go line by line and talk about each of them, should it be included or excluded. So it's not really an answer, but I hope that helps give some clarity on the process and the master Excel document.
Ian?
One other comment I'll make is this is one we all collectively struggle with, council after council, is my impression from my short experience now, is building up reserves. It's one thing to maintain or cut service levels and to think on the, how do I balance the budget this year? How do we build up our reserves? We're not in a crisis in our community, but we are not in a sweet spot with our reserves. Our reserves are tepid, to say the least, and the pressures on our capital, where the reserves often do help out in the capital projects, the pressure on the capital is the provincial government does not fund municipalities as well as they used to, and that's downloading to us as the local taxpayer. So that makes that challenge twice as hard now. How do we save money for the long term, a reserve, and how do we make those reserves even bigger than we wish we had to? And that's a real challenge. And on a family level, that's a challenge too, right? We know it on a personal level. You know, man, I really want that service level of a skidoo, but how do I save when I can't work anymore and I'm old age?
Teach. I think we have to be very careful with where we go with our taxes, especially if we're not maximizing absolutely everything about this town to create income. And we've talked a little bit about raising parking fees and enforcing bylaws on people and everyone that breaks our bylaws to bring in more money. That's one step. We as a council and as an administration need to look at other ways we can make money and create revenue from the tourists that come in here. And instead of defaulting to taxing our residents, Banff approved 2.97%. We should have a goal to be underneath that. I think that shows that we're doing what we can to lessen the burden on our taxpayers and taking advantage of what we have here, which is something that most places don't have. And Sylvan Lake has not taken advantage of that to its fullest extent. So we need to make sure everything from putting a QR code on a picnic table and renting those out. There's little things that we can do to create more revenue for our town that's not taxing our residents. Red Deer is 3.97%. They wanted 8% and they got down to 3.9. So, and like I said, Banff 2.9. There is conversations with what we had at Alberta Munis about municipal accommodation taxes that the provincial government's looking into. I asked the Premier a question about taking handcuffs off of municipalities, and she gave a pretty thoughtful answer about that and shadow populations. So we want to make sure we're following up with that. I've followed up a little bit with the Premier, but she's a hard person to get a hold of, obviously. So there are many things that I think are on the table that we can still do to lessen the burden on Sylvan Lake taxpayers, and making sure that that extra money is coming from people who come and use our town, and taking advantage of the amenities that we have here that we haven't done in the past.
No other thoughts? You can ask a quick question. You can even ask a long question.
My question is strat planning, which we haven't done yet, which is now at the end of February. So I guess my question is probably to Don. Because we begin the process of budgeting on the 25th of February. And then will we, in that weekend of strat planning, find our priorities? Because I get a little worried about going into operating budget discussions. Is like, what are our priorities? And as a new councillor, I don't know what those are yet. Whether we're continuing with what was decided last strat planning for next year, or just fill me in on that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Definitely the first year of budgeting is a challenging one because you don't have your own priorities set up yet, and you won't have them in time for this budget process. We'll start the strategic planning process in February. I believe the end product was more like May, I want to say, that we're getting a report. There'll be another follow-up a month after that. I don't have the exact timelines. I do think that one thing we can do as a council moving forward, looking at the next election, is how to address that. You know, you see things, because it's a lot to put on you as a new councillor, not knowing your priorities. So I think if you're just looking at our current strat plan, keeping that in mind, the motions that you as council have made in this room are historical processes, and then know that this budget is not going to be 100%. Like next year, you could see a lot of changes based on the updated strat plan, a year in this seat of getting that experience, of hearing from residents, seeing how things get implemented. But this first one is a challenging one. Some municipalities, there was a Councillor Iwanicki, I believe, in the finance course you were in, one of the recommendations was to approve the budget in September, August, before the election. I've seen some municipalities approve a 2-year fully approved budget so that it doesn't even come to this table. So it is a concern, but yeah. Sorry, I couldn't give a better answer there.
Do you have what you need, Mr. Moore? Can you do with what we've given you?
March, not May.
Yeah, sorry. I think we can. Your chair. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's the extra date, the extra meeting. Sorry.
Megan?
I'm just looking at the list of questions and around the operating projects. I'll say there's no specifics because I've been adding them to that edge item list as we've gone, so I trust that they'll all be on there. It's hard to talk about them until I see what's on that list, and then I could say, ooh, this is missing. So I hope we get to see that overall list at the start of the budget process, even if it's just like sharing the spreadsheet with everything in it, or because not seeing the full list until deliberations day is a challenge. But just one item from earlier tonight that it wasn't actually captured through a number, is we talked about increased signage. And is there a cost for that? And I guess my thought is probably parking lot signage makes the most sense to have all the things, but have we factored that into the lakefront conversation? Other than that, I think everything has kind of been captured along the way.
We'll make sure that that's in there. I know we've done a lot around the golf carts was a significant one. That will have to be in here. So I'm sure that our enforcement will have, and parks will have that, or has already identified that. We haven't met yet. It's tomorrow, I think.
Okay.
Anything from the Bloom information that council wants specifically to see? You know, we've talked about value for money, the MPI calculation, enhanced marketing efforts, that kind of stuff. But
it was in Bloom that we had the conversation about inflation and how it's different for municipalities. Mm-hmm. And I think just addressing that in the communication
Yeah, that's the MPI calculation, Municipal Price Index, yeah.
Thoughts from anyone else? Yeah?
So I did spend some time and I went back through my Bloom presentation because I remember enjoying the information when it was presented. So there was a slide in there about municipal tax dollar value, the competition. So a comparative value that, you know, that listing of, so when we break down the average property tax and the increase and what it means, you know, we're presenting it in a way that we're saying, this is everything you get from our municipal services for the increase. And what does that get you on the other side? Well, it might get you a fancy dinner for two and, you know, so I liked it getting laid out that way. So a lot of the pages, if you go back to the Bloom presentation, there's probably 3 or 4 pages. I think we can get valuable nuggets out of all of them to just be a little more creative in our explanations of tax increases, because people don't like to see them, but we need to for sure let them know that they're going to get more value, more services and stuff, but I like that comparison.
Ian?
One of the messaging that I have become more aware of myself is the fact that our municipal taxes for the average working person is the smallest of all our taxes we pay. Provincial and federal taxes we pay much higher numbers on, and yet we often focus our anger and frustration on our municipal services and taxes. Another thing in that messaging and awareness that I've had in the last number of years is just the idea of how little we actually control of the budget in terms of property tax. Property tax pays for a minority of the services we provide in this community. Grants from the provincial government and other service, or revenues, I should say, and fees, that's the bulk of the budget, not the property taxes. Which is why, you know, we have to raise taxes so much when we want to add one single item. So that's an awareness that I've had, and that's helped me frame my own arguments about, you know, what role do we each play as governments, and we absolutely play an important one, but we actually have the smallest lever to actually make any change. We are so dependent on the other levels of government. And that's part of course, a frustration of being a councillor, let alone a taxpayer.
Any other thoughts? Okay, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
Council, committee, and event reports. We're not going to go through them. They're there for you to read. Upcoming events and meetings. Can I get through upcoming events and meetings before I? It's on the one before. Okay.
I just have a request about the formatting. I understand that we are trying to make SharePoint work for us, but if you read my report that was nicely paragraphed and formatted for you, it's awful, and I'm really hoping we can work with IT to come up with a different way to present these reports. And SharePoint and Microsoft Forms, I'm starting to think are maybe not the format for us, because I don't know if you guys could get through my summary. Ian sometimes also, you know, writes some longer ones, and the way that it formats it is just a big old clump. I'm wondering if we can look into, like, is there a PDF option you could submit through SharePoint? Is there something else we can do to make this readable and digestible information? Because grammar and spacing matters, and SharePoint doesn't like that. But I hope you all enjoyed my clumped report.
I blame homeschool. Okay, upcoming events and meetings. January 27th, regular meeting of council. February 3rd, committee of the whole. February 14th and 15th, the Ice Dragon Boat Festival. If you have not yet done your waivers, please get them back to the mayor. She is frantically trying to collect the waivers so that we can have a team. Is there anything else that anyone would like to bring up before we close this meeting? No, excellent. A meeting adjourned.